of Finance special meeting and hearing on a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $388,000 for the Simsbury Performing Arts Center bandshell expansion next to ACT project to be funded via the Capital Reserve Fund. We do have additional items on our agenda after that. But before we begin, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin the meeting, I wanted to take this opportunity to officially welcome Regina Pinn and Lalitha Shivaswamy to our board. We are excited for both of you to be joining us. Regina is a past member of the Green Energy Task Force and has worked closely with Tom Roy, known by that. The Board of Assessment Appeals and a past volunteer for First Robotics as a mechanical and systems engineer. She has extensive experience in capital project management, manufacturing, and advanced technologies. Lalitha is a current member of the Charter Revision Commission, is president of Helios Management Corporation, the chief executive officer of People First Technologies, and an adjunct professor at UConn Law. She holds a Doctor of Science of Law, a Master of Laws, and an MBA in Finance and Marketing, and probably a few other that I missed. Lalitha is active in various choral organizations in town and regionally. Warm welcome to you both. I would ask for a motion to amend the agenda. We actually do need a chair and a vice chair before we can conduct business. So may I have a motion to amend the agenda to move the election of the chair and the vice chair and the appointment of subcommittee to the board's first item?
So moved.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. May I have a motion to elect the chair of the Board of Finance?
I nominate Lisa Hevner to return as chair of the Board of Finance.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Art Wallace on the owl, so thank you, everyone. May I have a motion to elect the vice chair?
I nominate Lalitha Shivaswamy to serve as vice chair of this board.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Art. May I have a motion to appoint Bert Helfand and Art Wallace to the Retirement Subcommittee and support and recommend Art Wallace as the chair of that subcommittee?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Okay.
I'll abstain as well.
That passes unanimously with 2 abstentions. May I have a motion to appoint Lalitha Shivaswamy to the Commercial Vacancy Subcommittee if that is established and once it's established?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. A couple quick housekeeping reminders before we move to the hearing. Remind folks to take the sexual harassment training and send a certificate to the town manager's office. That needs to be done within 6 months. And there is a CCM training for newly elected or current officials on Saturday, January 10th from 9 to 3 in Cromwell if anyone is interested in attending. Okay, moving on to the public hearing. The request before us is for a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $388,000 for the Simsbury Performing Arts Bandshell Extension Next Act project to be funded via the Capital Reserve Fund. The action we will be asked to consider tonight is whether to move it to referendum. We have been advised 5 minutes before the meeting started, confirmed that a referendum is required. This was checked by both our council and bond council. So that is the action we are being asked to consider tonight. This project was in its totality presented to our board for the fiscal year 2025 budget in May of 2024. Over the summer, the Board of Selectmen considered action on this item in granting the award of contracts. On November 7th, by a 4-2 vote at the Board of Selectmen, a special meeting was held at 10 a.m. in the morning in this room and recommended to our board to approve the supplemental appropriation for referendum. The Board of Finance received the recommendation at its November 20th meeting and heard a presentation on the proposal. After hearing information about the supplemental appropriation, the board voted to schedule a public hearing on that request. That hearing is being held tonight. Notice of this hearing was posted in the Hartford Current, sent out through the town's listserv, posted on the town's social media page, was reported in the Simsbury Patch, and is listed on news and announcements in the Simsbury town homepage. I will ask if there are any members who would like to recuse from consideration of this motion.
Yes, I recuse.
I would as well.
Okay, we'd ask you to step down from the dais during the next phase.
Maybe we should explain for the benefit of the public that these two members are also members of the board of the Performing Arts Center, and they're recusing themselves to avoid any appearance of conflict.
But there is no financial conflict of interest. Okay. Having received this information, we'll begin with public audience. We'll ask that all speakers state their name and address and limit comments to 3 minutes. If you need more time, please know that you can speak again after everyone has had one opportunity to speak. So with that, we'll begin with public audience. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? We'll start with Jeff Dornberg, who is the chairman of the Performing Arts Center.
Thank you. Yes, as you just said, Jeff Dornenberg, I live at 225 Old Farms Road here in Simsbury, and I'm here speaking for myself and also as board chair of Simsbury Meadows. And I'm here tonight to ask you for a positive vote to move forward to referendum, please. Our board is all volunteers, just like you. Our nonprofit was formed at the request of the town. We act in the benefit of the town. We've been in conversations with the town now for years regarding this construction. And in July, our board voted with Mark present unanimously to take over $100,000 worth of costs out of this building so that we would stay on budget. We've actually said all along, we'll take whatever level of finish we can get that gets a certificate of occupancy, because we're running our summer programs out of a garden shed now in the parking lot. This will all be a step up for us. But it's not just a step up for us, because it helps us put on better shows, and there's also going to be 3 exterior bathrooms that were going to be temporary bathrooms that the town was going to put in, that we took that temporary money years ago and have been holding on to it for this, right? So we're going to have external bathrooms that service the dog park, the playground, the rails to trails, right? And I've done a lot of maps for the guys on the rails to trails, so I know that they mark things like bathrooms. Our small board has raised over $1 million for this public building. It's taken us years to get to this point. And with donations ranging from tiny to impressive, our board alone is contributing $200,000 of that $1 million. I can't think of another volunteer board in town that's done that. There may be out there, but I can't think of one. Our annual budget for 2026, right, is going to be far in excess of $800,000. Our income comes from rental fees, ticket sales, our lovely sponsors, and donors. That income goes to pay for, well, if there's a loss, 2 out of the last 5 years have been incredibly rainy summers and have led to a loss. That money goes to pay for that. And if there's a surplus, we set it aside for future projects. That's how some of that $1 million came about, is we set aside money for future projects. And Circus Smarkus, in one of our rainy summers, they trashed the field when they moved out. Our group spent $20,000 to fix that field again because it needed to be fixed, and it was one of our projects where it happened. We're currently raising money for 2026. In addition to the cost of the entertainers, we pay for police, porta potties, security, huge electric bills every time there's a concert, and a myriad of other costs. And this is true for every concert, including the free concerts that we try to work into our schedule every year. We try to get a couple of free concerts every year. And our volunteers, last night was our volunteer party that we had. We had over 100 volunteers this year that put nearly 1,500 hours of volunteer time in. And that doesn't count. That's time that we track, right? Because we give them certificates and things like that for participating. But we have board members that are down there. When I'm picking up trash in that field at 12 o'clock at night after a concert, that's not in that. So our volunteers are important to us. And the important thing for us is that our patrons tell us that they want a more robust and predictable schedule. They want more brand names, they want more experimentation. All of this costs money. And right now, we're actively out raising money and creating new partnerships. Partnerships are usually something we can do instead of spending money. Because what we're trying to do is build a healthy, interesting, and sustainable performing arts center that can go on into the future. And I appreciate you guys, I appreciate town staff for all the time that they put into this, and I'll sit down.
And I will ask the board's forgiveness. We should have done presentations first so that the public is adequately informed before we do the public audience. So we will go ahead and do that for the rest, and then if we continue with public audience after the presentations. We do our public audience so that if somebody wants to speak, they can speak again. So this will be consistent with that. So apologies, I rushed through and missed a paragraph in my notes, which I wrote down so that I would not forget to do this, and I jumped right over it. So we will take a pause on that, come back to public audience so that the public is adequately informed about what this project is, and we will start with
Well, good evening. So I at least get a nice opening act with Jeff, talk a little bit about this project. And it's nice kind of to have that opening act kind of going with the theatrical theme today, because it has been a long time in coming to getting to this point, and I know there's been a lot of energy and a lot of effort. And we're going back to Bandshell was 20 years ago that it happened for Simsbury. And it's been the home of the symphony. It's been a big part of our culture. When it was built, and there was a lot of donations back then, it was constructed without the support buildings. For years, they had the 3 temporary trailers. Not the best look. They were functional, they worked, and they've made the symphony what it is down there for all those years, but it's always been the goal to have a second act, a next step, a building that is appropriate for that site. The existing structure down there, we've done little to it in the last 20 years. There have been some additions, like the sound towers and some other small things, but nothing to the actual structure itself. As Jeff mentioned, the town had budgeted $350,000 for permanent bathrooms down at that site to get away from portlets. Just so that all of the families, you look at Rotary Park and how much use that gets on a spring day, and families, and the dog park, and our bike path. And I kind of smiled when Jeff mentioned the bathrooms, because Lisa, when you were first selectman, it seemed we always ended up in a conversation about bathrooms. And this was just that, is we were gonna have a permanent site, and we were gonna, make the bathrooms down there a little bit more Simsbury. So, as Jeff said, we leveraged that money to make this project a reality. I keep forgetting I have the control over here. Timeline, we started really in earnest talking about this back in August of 22. Performing Arts Center came to us, they had the idea of leveraging the money and saying, can we get this done? Design plans were completed in December of 22. And then we had a third-party construction estimate, especially at that time, coming out of COVID. Costs were through the roof, they were crazy, we didn't quite know what to do. So we invested in having a trustworthy construction estimate, or as trustworthy as you can get with the volatility of the market. That came back at about $2.69 million for the construction of the building itself. We ended up very fortunate to get the DECD grant in December of 23. That came about in just a matter of weeks. We applied for it, and I'll be honest, I was shocked we had it by the end of that year. That really has been the driver of this project. So from that, I would say the fundraising, which had been a slow trickle, went into full gear. We put this on the budget. It went to referendum, and we were able to get a reasonable bid a year late. The goal all along had been to be in construction in the summer of 2024. The problem was in the summer of 2024, we had 2 of the 3 legs that we needed for this stool. We had the town portion of $850,000. We had the grant at nearly $1 million, but we did not have the donations at that point. Would have been great if we had started construction. Hindsight being 2020, we didn't do that. That put us susceptible to inflationary costs. We had carried a 10 to 15% contingency, as is normal in these types of projects when we went through the budget process. And when we received the bids, I kind of said it was the worst possible outcome we could have had. If the bid was lower, we would have had plenty of money to do the project, just the way we had hoped it would have been. If the bid had been higher, we would have known to hit the brakes. And it came in right in the middle where we had some very, very tough decisions. And I think it was the first time, and we did this as an effort to be transparent, we came to the Board of Selectmen to make sure everybody was on board, knowing that we were going forward with a construction project with 6% contingency. That was after we had already done some value engineering. We stripped out a lot of the things we didn't think were absolutely necessary to bring the cost down, and yet we were still going in with a relatively tight contingency for this type of project.
I'm sorry, Tom, when were those bids received?
The bids were received in 2025, May of 2025. All of the cost estimates, and we actually even had a revised cost estimate, were based upon a bid or award in July of 2024. So we're a year late, based upon, our cost estimates. Looking at that, and I did a little research today, I'm not an economist, but somewhere between 5 and 8% is what we were looking at for the increase by delaying a year. 5% is what I got off my, very sophisticated Google search today. Our third-party construction estimator had carried 8% for an annual inflationary rate for construction in this region. But you can see it depending upon if you're looking at the construction cost, and our low bid was 2.5 million, or if you're looking at the full project, the 2.78 that was approved at referendum, you're talking a significant dollar value that we effectively lost during that year, taking away from that float, that flexibility, that contingency that is so important during these construction projects. So speaking about the challenges, and there have been a few, no project like this ever goes as smooth as we would hope, but we had unsuitable soil and we had utilities that needed to be relocated. When the Performing Arts Center hired a design firm, they hired Colliers, which is a local architecture and engineering firm. Jeff, I think this would be fair to say, they did this not knowing if this would be a real project. This was, a tight budget for them to pay for a project which wasn't necessarily going to go forward. And they did not, as part of their scope of work, do test pits or test borings or soil investigations. So we went out and we were able to determine very early on that the soil there was non-native material. Not necessarily bad, but it was put there over time by somebody. And that meant that it actually had to be excavated out, tested, put back and compacted. We were carrying a cost of $60,000 for that. We were able to cut that cost in about half by doing a large portion of that with town forces. Our public works crews went out. We have skilled people on staff. We were able to use our equipment, do the excavation, and help save some money towards the project. We're still carrying $30,000 in a contingency line item for the remaining unsuitable soils, which were much closer to some of the building infrastructure, some of the water lines, some of the electrical circuits that need to be removed and relocated anyways. We decided we didn't want to dig close to an electrical utility that was going to be relocated by a contractor. That's just being safe and smart. We also had some of those utilities, electrical lines, communication lines that were behind the building, right where the building is getting the addition, that needed to be relocated. And then the biggest challenge, and I'm sure we'll have quite a bit of time to talk about it tonight, is when this went through the design phase, the architect's interpretation of the code was that the building did not meet the requirements for fire sprinklers. When we got to the permitting phase of the project, our town fire marshal was very clear that his interpretation is that it needs fire sprinklers. Pretty easy how that goes. He is the law of the land in Simsbury. We originally tried to, split the baby and go with fire separation. We'd have fire doors. That way code compliance would be providing two separate buildings from a fire standpoint. That cost ended up coming back right in the neighborhood of what we would be paying for fire sprinklers anyways. It was very clear that the right thing to do was just to, essentially bite the bullet, do the right thing and put in the fire sprinklers. Total cost of the fire sprinklers we're carrying right now $275,000. A big portion of that cost is we have to go all the way from Iron Horse Boulevard to the Performing Arts Center with a new separate, it's probably gonna be an 8-inch ductile iron pipe just for the fire line. The water that's used in the facility now for the bathrooms and the sinks, that one is not permitted to be used for fire service. It needs to be a separate structure. Doesn't seem that far when you walk it, but when you're digging the trench, it certainly is expensive. So, when we talk about the dollar values.
Hey Tom, before you leave that page.
Yep.
Should we be adding all those numbers together? Like, cause the last two seem like they're overlapping.
Well, I think we're gonna get to that.
85 to 200 and the 275.
This was, we got a slide at the end, I think, that's gonna add everything together.
Okay, all right, I'll wait for that then. Thank you.
Okay,
But the sprinklers would be an alternative to the fire separation. We
exactly
wouldn't
right.
do both
You don't do
under any
both, exactly.
Oh, okay, so I shouldn't be adding all of them then. Got it.
That's correct. This was just we're just pointing out some of the problems we're gonna work on the numbers in the next couple slides. Okay.
Thank you.
No worries. And I'd say for any of you, please feel free to stop me anywhere along the way. So looking at our budget, starting with the $2.78 million, it was approved at referendum. We had a construction bid value for the construction loan of $2.516 million. That leaves in the budget $266,881. During these construction projects, we do not just pay the contractor to do the work and turn a blind eye. Colliers, the design engineer, has to be involved. We have to make sure that the heating system is the heating system that they designed. We have to make sure that if there's details, and you couldn't believe the details on a building like this, that the flashing and the drip edge and that the siding and everything is what they specified, so that we wanna make sure for one, for code compliance, and two, for the residents of Simsbury, you're getting exactly what you paid for. Nobody's watering down anything, nothing's not what it's supposed to be. And this is typical for any construction. We also have code requirements to do construction testing of materials, steel, concrete, the compaction of the soil that we dug up and put back down. That, we're carrying $124,185 for that. So now as we enter construction, we have $142,000 left. Change orders, we've had a couple of change orders to date, and this is current as of today. All of the change orders together for the 4 change orders totals just under $20,000. We have the value engineering credit of $96,680, which was for modifying the roofing, removing the counters and cabinets, changing the railing type, simplifying the wall coverings that go along the side of the building. That was what we thought we could pull out reasonably within this project. The first phase, I wanna be very careful on this, of the fire sprinklers is $117,000 add to the project. This does not include that water line. This is just the fire sprinklers in the existing building and in the new addition. Part of the challenge with this addition of the fire sprinklers is it's not just to the 3,000 square foot addition, it's to the entire stage structure. We had a very small change order of $522 for a water fountain, and we have another credit where we were not changing out the inside paneling on the door that leads to the stage, saved us another $2,000. Leaves us with $123,000 available. We know that we have to get that fire service from Iron Horse Boulevard to the Performing Arts Center building itself. We still have some unsuitable soil, and we still know we have some utility relocation work to do. Carrying a number of just under 200,000, that would put us at a deficit of 81,582.
Sorry, just a question before we
Yep.
move on. The construction administration costs, those look like pretty routine costs for a project like this. The way it's represented makes it look like it caught the budget by surprise. Could you talk about that a little bit?
No, not at all. In fact, when I was putting this slide together, I wanted to switch the order because we had the construction inspection budgeted and ahead of that on in terms of the order of when it happened.
So when we had the 2.78 million, the 124 for the admin costs was counted as part
That's
of that?
exactly right, yeah.
Wait, let me just interpret that though. Does that mean that the contingency was already down to 142 before we started, really?
Not exactly, this is a good discussion. We knew using the July 2025 date, when we made the decision with the Board of Selectmen, with the town manager, with the Performing Arts Center, with everybody involved at the time, to make the decision to go forward with the project, we knew that we were carrying construction administration costs, we knew that what the bid value was, but we also knew that we had the value engineering credit coming our way. And at that time, we were carrying $85,000 for both the soil and the utility relocation work. So we made the decision to go forward with a 6% contingency in July, knowing all of those things.
Tom, when you made 6% in July, there were two scenarios given to the Board of Selectmen, scenario A and B. Scenario A assumed that the Performing Arts Center would raise an additional 1 million, not get the credit to the design phase. Scenario B,
Additional
credited.
100,000?
What?
An additional 100,000?
No, million beyond the design phase. You know, they did the design and then they were gonna raise $1 million for the project.
Okay, yeah, no, I misunderstood. I thought you were saying that they were gonna raise another million.
No, $1 million for the project in addition to what they'd already spent on design. Scenario B said, no, the design is part of the $1 million that they've committed to raise.
All of these numbers are based upon a total project budget, an expenditure allowance of 2.78 million.
And was the design phase included in that 2.7 million?
That is, I'm gonna turn that over to Mark to, in terms of where this particular funding is coming from is not best answered by me. I can talk to what we are spending, what we planned on spending, but I cannot talk to.
Well, we'll wait and we'll get through
Okay.
your presentation, the
Yeah.
audience, and then we'll get into the depth of our questions.
Okay. Do you have questions, Will, Bert?
No.
Okay.
I had one, I forgot it.
Alright, we're here for you. Alright, so we came up with what do we need to safely move this project forward, $388,000 of supplemental appropriation. It would take care of a portion of the unsuitable soils that remain,
I'm
relocation.
sorry, I remembered my question.
Okay.
In the previous slide.
Yep.
So the change orders that you had in mind back in July, $200,000 for unsuitable soil for the fire service, $117,000 for fire sprinklers, so that comes to,
Let me do this. This slide does not best represent where we were
okay.
in July.
It doesn't seem to me that these numbers exactly correspond to the ones in the previous
No,
slide.
and where this is such a challenge is we're hitting a moving target. Our numbers, a lot of our numbers, and I'll be very clear which are estimates and which are actual numbers. Most of the numbers when we're dealing with this, especially back in July, are estimates. We know that we have about 7 feet of unsuitable material. Some areas it was deeper, some areas it was less, so we carried a number.
So these are the estimates you made in July, and the numbers in the preceding slide are more up-to-date estimates about the additional costs?
No, these numbers, I think it's just perfect. Everything above me are real numbers.
Okay.
It's one Tom, if it's above Tom, it's real numbers, okay?
And
The
the
205 is an estimate
An estimate as of what date?
today.
Today.
Does that help?
That's not a contingency estimate, that's like an actual best estimate of something you have to do.
That is something we have to do. We know we still have unsuitable soil, we know we still have utility relocation work, and we know we have to bring in a fire service line from Iron Horse Boulevard. But we do not have,
So I'm keeping score at home here, so like
alright,
your 252, if you totaled it out, that left column gets you to 289. So you're basically saying that now our best estimate went from I'm calling 2516 just 252 to 289 is your total like best estimate today.
if I'm hearing you correct, yeah, because what I'm showing on the last line is we're 81,582 over budget.
There you go.
By the
And
bottom
that's
of
the
the slide.
difference between your whatever the two.
But
Yep.
that's 81,000
Whatever.
over 2.78 million.
That is correct.
You got it.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Keep going. Just want to make sure I'm keeping score correctly.
No, the fact our numbers line up, you've made my night. We're doing great.
Don't trust my math, Tom.
Right. That brings us to, okay, we're up to our referendum threshold. Unfortunately, this is, worst case scenario, not where anybody wanted to be. We looked at every option and was there a reasonable option? We couldn't find one to stay under the 2.78. So when we look at the supplemental appropriation that we're requesting, it includes a small value for unsuitable soils. It includes the relocation of electric and communication lines.
And I'm sorry, and we
Yep.
need to do that because as you just showed us, we know we have to do those things and we already don't have enough money for them.
That is correct. Yep. So relocation of the electric communication lines, fire service line, I should have separated that out. The fire sprinklers are already covered. Okay, but that fire service line at about $175,000. Relocation and upgrade of security cameras, and we can talk about that item. That was not included in the original scope of work. We would like to add back in two things from the value engineering and only two things from value engineering, and that's siding along the entire exterior. So that when you look at this building, which we are all working very hard on, it will not look like a new building attached to an old building. And the cabinets and casework, it makes sense to have a complete building. Relatively small number for the cabinets and casework. And that would be my recommendation, always open to discussion. Because we are looking at everything, we feel if we go long on the construction, we're already right up against our budget, but we want to carry some additional contingency for construction oversight and administration. If we need additional testing, we want to make sure that we have the ability to do that. And then we are carrying additional contingency for future unknowns. This would bring us to about a 6% contingency, which is less than 10%. However, we have already done some of the most risky work. We've gone underground where we couldn't see what was there. We've broken into the back of the existing building. So far, generally things have gone pretty well, and we feel that 6% is the number that can bring us in where we need to be with a good building that'll serve its purposes. You look like you have a question. Nope?
No, I'm gonna try and we'll try and move you along, get to public audience, and then we'll go
Okay.
deep with you.
All right. Just because I did start this off with the fact that we did get the grant, which really drove this project, I also did want to just break into the funding, and these are very, very round numbers. But you can see with the 2.78, SIMPAC was kind of carrying the bulk of the load, but it was almost divvied up a third. Assuming we go through with the 388 appropriation and assuming we use all of it, which is not the case, we're gonna bring back to the town anything we don't need, not wanna use, anything we don't need. That just gives you the breakdown that the town would be just under 40%. State grant stays the same at $900,000. Key cost considerations, we have an existing building that's 20 years old that we are tying into. This is an architectural building. We're not adding on a new bay to the CVS in the center of town that's square and rectangular and would just be standard construction. The construction estimates were generated for a 2024 award. We ended up in 2025. This is a very small 3,052 square foot addition that has 7 bathrooms. So for any of us who've ever done remodeling at your home, you know the bathroom and the kitchen are the money pits. You just spend a lot more money in a very small area. That's part of the driver to this. These are your square footage costs. I gave you 4 different options. Normally when you're doing a square footage cost, it would be the square footage of just the construction cost. So that would be 2.66 million in round numbers, get you in the range of $871 a square foot. If you looked at this as only paying for a square foot of the addition, which again, a lot of this work, especially the sprinkler work, is going to go into the existing building. If you wanna look at it on the negative side, you're over $1,000 a square foot. It's very easy to say that number's crazy. But you could also, if you wanna look at it completely as the optimist, the construction cost, we'll call it 2.7 million, 7,000 square foot building puts you down at less than $400 a square foot, which is, less than I paid when I renovated my house. So it's all about how do you wanna look at the numbers, and the reality is this type of addition is tough to use a square foot number on because it is an architectural building and we are adding on new facets to the old building. I was asked just to come up with an annual operating cost. You're looking at about $17,500 a year. The electric is high because it is gonna use electric heat. We are hoping in the very near future to put solar on this building. This, next to the skating center, is probably one of the best roofs in town to put solar on. It has a nice slope, it faces south. There's no roof penetrations, it would be a great project. This number does exclude the performances, because as Jeff said, when they have a large concert going, the electric meter spins, and that's not something that we would normally account for in our building fees. Okay, that, I know you had big plans, so we're open to questions for me, anybody else?
We'll start with public audience, and then what we'll do is our board will then follow up based on the questions we've heard from the public audience and ask you in depth as to some of the numbers you presented.
All right.
All right, thank you, Tom. All right, we've heard from Jeff Dornenberg. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Chris?
It takes me a minute, I'm sorry.
You can take your time.
I won't trip.
Chris, if you could just state your full name and
Yeah.
address, thank you.
I know that drill.
Yeah.
From Charter. Chris Barnett, 15 Ox Yoke Drive. I'm speaking to you tonight both as a board member at the Simsbury Performing Arts Center, but as a longtime Simsbury resident, I won't tell you how many decades. My family and I have been patrons of the Performing Arts Center long before I joined the board, and I can say with complete confidence that it's one of the Simsbury's finest community assets. In the 2024 Plan of Conservation and Development, the residents expressed how important our town's sense of place and overall livability are to them. It's important to make a clear distinction that Simsbury Meadows Performing Arts Center is a nonprofit organization dedicated to enriching our community and region through the arts, while the band shell is a town-owned facility that we operate under a 15-year agreement. For the past 20 years, we've relied on generous sponsors, donors, and patrons to support a wide range of events, from large-scale concerts in the beloved Talcott Mountain Music Festival to marathons, children's programming, and community celebrations. Several years ago, we embarked on a fundraising effort to expand and modernize the town's facility so we could continue attracting top-tier performances in an increasingly competitive market, while also providing a state-of-the-art venue for our longstanding partners like the Hartford Symphony. Since 2005, this has been a successful and meaningful public-private partnership with the town of Simsbury. We're grateful to have received a State of Connecticut grant, and with the strong support of voters who approved town funding, and along with more than $1 million raised privately, and I was the chair of the fundraising committee, so I can tell you how long that was. We were able to break ground on the next act expansion, completing the original vision for the facility. Tonight, I respectfully ask for your support of the additional funding request. These improvements will provide critical safety enhancements to the facility, including the installation of a fire hydrant on Iron Horse Boulevard. It's an upgrade that will benefit not only the Performing Arts Center, but other buildings and businesses in the area. The security cameras will also address the vandalism that we experience down at the facility each year. I thank you for your consideration and your continued support of this important community asset.
Thanks, Chris. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Is there anyone else who would like to speak in public audience? Marty. If you could state your full name and address, please. Thank
I'll
you.
state my name but not my address. I'm Lori Boyko and my address is well on record in the town and I'm not gonna keep broadcasting it on TV. This should have all been worked out before taxpayers approved everything. I know it's hard for people with money to understand, but there are many people in this town just trying to pay their bills. When does it stop? When a family skips another meal? When a senior chooses between medicine and heat? When one more lifelong resident is forced to move because Simsbury became unaffordable on your watch? We should not be here. This project is unnecessary, extravagant, and places an undue burden on Simsbury taxpayers who are already struggling. Taking hardworking taxpayers' money for concert venues is not what government is for. The answer to tonight's question is no. We don't have the money. We absolutely don't. Who is we? We is not the town of Simsbury. The town of Simsbury has no independent funds. Every dollar comes from us, the taxpayers. While some wealthier residents might afford concert tickets and higher taxes, most ordinary families cannot. We're grappling with inflation, rising costs for essentials, and already existing exorbitant taxes. This expansion already caters to a select few at the expense of everyone else, undermining the principles of our constitutional republic, which protects all citizens, not just the affluent, from excessive government spending. So we're seriously considering another giant raid on reserves for a luxury venue many of us will never be able to afford to use? Our capital fund reserves exist because taxpayers overpaid in prior budgets, intended for emergencies or true priorities. This isn't an emergency, it's the result of poor planning. Issues like fire sprinklers and floodplain soil challenges were foreseeable. Experts in architecture and engineering should have anticipated them and erred on the side of including them in the costs. Joan Coe has warned about this site being in a floodplain for years, which creates building challenges. She was ignored. These aren't construction surprises, they're oversights that taxpayers shouldn't bail out. Worse, this project has proceeded through bait and switch tactics. In 2022, $350,000 was approved from reserves for bathrooms, bundled into the overall budget. By 2024, that ballooned to an additional $500,000 for Simsbury taxpayers. Now we're asking for another $388,000 due to inadequate contingencies and underfunding, a 46% hike in Simsbury's contribution and 14% overall. Neither the state nor the PAC guarantees matching increases, leaving taxpayers to foot what started as $350,000 and has now mushroomed into a bill of $1,238,000 unless we scale back. It is your job to make decisions, not just for those who can afford this at any cost, but to consider those who can't afford it. Many residents are at their financial breaking points, and essential maintenance on existing town buildings awaits funding. Please have the courage and integrity to vote no.
Thank you, Lori. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at public audience? Is there anyone else? Dave?
Dave Ryan, 20 West Ledge Road, West Simsbury. I've been involved with the Performing Arts Center since 2008 on the board. And we have been struggling to support the symphony and keep it here as one of the valued cultural attributes of the town and something that supports the value of our properties because it's a desirable place for people to live. It's one of the quality of life things that makes this place what it is. And a little bit of money, $300,000, is, I think, a thing that we really just have to pay and do for the purposes of making sure that the property is safe and that it does what it's supposed to do.
Thank you.
So please approve it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at public audience? Is there anyone else who would like to speak at public audience? Last time, is there anyone else who would like to speak at the public audience? We will now close this portion of the meeting to public audience and move on to questions from the board. We have had a presentation. First of all, I want to thank members of the PAC for being here. We do appreciate your efforts. It is an all-volunteer board, and I do want to recognize the efforts of your work and thank you for all you do. I want to thank members of the public who came and expressed concerns. We did receive, make sure all board members saw this, it came late in the day, an email from Jennifer and Alistair Pringle that was distributed to board members by email, and we'll ask Amy to include that in the minutes. We'll begin with questions from board members. Is there anyone who would like to start us off?
I'm gonna throw one out there.
Sure. Go ahead, Art.
Go ahead, Art.
So, Tom, you mentioned an important point, and I want to just drill into it a little bit. So you said something to the effect of, what we don't use, we'll give back to the town. To talk to me about the order of the money being spent, because we had the original, 278, whichever way you want to look at it, the 252 or the 278, if you want to include the contingency. Is there a formal process whereby whatever we put up now is like the last to go, everything else would go first? Like how do we like make our taxpayers comfortable that there's an appropriate order of operations here?
Okay. I'm gonna start, but I'll look to Amy to jump in as soon as I get offline. I kind of see the question you're asking is last in, first out, so to speak. So the way I would look
You
is
got it. I wasn't gonna give the LIFO-FIFO thing, but
oh, it's okay, Art. The way I would interpret it is the 278 at this point is essentially spent, and so it would be the 388 that would be used going forward. And again, if anybody who has seen the way both myself and Adam Kessler manage these projects, we take the money very seriously. We don't spend anything frivolous. We don't add in just because it's there. And I would believe anything that we didn't spend would go back to the very same funding source that we're taking the 388 from now.
Got it. And you know what, I forgot to say one thing that's super important before I start to ask my question. Like, a huge thank you to you and the PAC. I do view this as a massive asset to our town. I realize these projects are not easy. The things you guys are doing, I think, are massively valuable to the town. So want to start there. I'm starting in a place of trying to figure out how to make this work, and at the same time balance this for our taxpayers who have obviously voiced their opinions here as well very thoughtfully. So I guess given your response, because I live in the business world and stuff doesn't matter unless it's in a contract of some sort. Is that contractually in the referendum if we were to word it that way, or is that something that we would be working on drafting? And Amy, that might be a question for you.
I think you can add it to the referendum if you want. It's also included, I know you're not here this evening, but there's an updated draft of the agenda submission for tonight that includes it in the agenda submission as well.
Got it. Thank you. I just think that's going to be really, really important. I just think as you go through different layers of something like this, and I always worry about what comes next, like we wouldn't want to find ourselves in a situation where we got in the wrong direction on spending these funds.
Jeff, as chair of the Performing Arts Center, is that your understanding as well? That money, the
That
388 will
this money
spend
that
last.
we're talking about?
Any savings
Yes.
will go returned. Let the record reflect that the PAC supports that interpretation.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Right, Art, continue if you have more.
I'll let someone else go with another question while I figure another one out here.
Bert?
Yeah, so we started down the road of this issue that confused us all in our last meeting, right? That is, the current appropriation includes $1,032,000 in donations from the PAC. And at our last meeting, we were told we have $900,000 of donations, $904,000. You're coaching me as I go along. And $128,000 was missing or somehow. Now, my understanding is that in the interim, we learned that $128,000 represents a payment that the PAC made for planning and design, and which will be credited towards that $1,032,000. Is that correct?
I'm gonna go through the same thing if I go on.
Yes.
Okay. So did the original estimate of $1,032,000 include that $128,000 for planning and design, or are we now short $128,000 as a result of this decision?
The numbers that we're using, the numbers that we were just showing that bring us to the 6% contingency, we're assuming the full 2.78 million plus the 388,000.
Right.
And as I understand it, and this kind of might be an Amy or a Mark question, is it comes down, there's authority to spend the funds through the appropriation, but there's not a defined funding source.
Kind of.
That's wrong. That's totally wrong. But that doesn't mean that we can't consider that $128,000 spent from donations. But again, I'm just trying to understand the process that got us here and the numbers, and
I could take a shot at it, Chair, with your permission. This has been fundamental to the discussions that we've had internally for some time. The narrative of the referendum question that was posed to the public, just from the top of my head, shall this project move forward if state's money is 900, our money is 850, and the calculated contributions of the PAC are the 1,032,000, and the public said yes to that. So the narrative of the referendum question was met, and the legal opinion and our opinion internally prior to the legal opinion was that the PAC had raised the 1,032,000 and therefore satisfied what the public was conveyed as part of that referendum question. And
Before you, when you say they raised the 132, 900,000 in the bank and they spent the 128 on design. So that totals the million.
That's actually more than the 1,032,000. That's correct. So we've internally we've referred to it as the 100,000, but Tom is correct. It's really 128. I would defer to Jeff, but I think the actual amount that they paid Colliers for the design work was 128 per. But that aside, the other side of the coin is, from the finance perspective, the dollars that are on the table to pay the ongoing project as we work towards completion is exclusive of that 128. So the answer to your question is yes. But the referendum question and the public, what we put out publicly about the project that led to the overwhelming approval by voters, we believe is accurate. And we have a legal opinion as of yesterday from Town Attorney DiCrescenzo that essentially this is no different than the PAC making an in-kind donation.
I understand that, and it may be that this is moot, but it's in the timeline of the numbers.
It's not moot at all.
And it's very confusing. So
It is.
it's moot only in the sense that I recognize that if we get $904,000
We're short.
from the PAC, and they've already paid $128,000 in design costs that are part of the budget. They will have fulfilled their obligations under.
And if I could continue to take that one point further. When we saw that happening through July and into our meeting with the Board of Selectmen, the answer internally was, we're not spending more money, we're not going back for a supplemental. Value engineer this if you can. And Tom went back and Adam spent literally weeks. We got the value engineering down by 100 and at one point 80 some thousand, all in. There was a tremendous effort made internally to reduce without changing any of the terms that went to referendum. So the idea was that this 100,000 shortfall would be mitigated by the value engineering.
Well, yeah, that's why I refer to it as moot, because now we're dealing with a new set of numbers but that was the question I wanted to ask, was whether this was something that the value engineering was, or that one of the factors that made the value engineering
You're absolutely
necessary, and it sounds like it was.
And to Tom's point, and I just want to reiterate that we need to look at this as the moving target that it was through May, June, July, August, up till the signing of the contract. The appropriation was there, the funding was there, the transparency was there. We brought it back to the full Board of Selectmen and conveyed with Tom how challenging it was. But every step of the way, we continued to be met with additional challenges. One other thing that we did internally to mitigate this, as Tom alluded to, and I want to thank DPW for this, is we used our own resources to get in there and start digging at the soils to find out what exactly were we going to need to carry as a contingency against unsuitable soils. Maybe we're carrying too much, and we don't want to go back to the Board of Finance and ask for a supplemental appropriation, only to turn around and we never needed it in the first place. So kudos to Tom and his team. They went in, they did a lot of that work. As a result of that, as he said earlier in his presentation, we're able to reduce the amount that we need to carry for the unsuitable soils. And lastly, I would just add that, you know, and I've learned a lot through this project. I'm not an engineer, I'm a finance guy. But I think it's fair to say, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have passed the biggest risk part of the project with, you know, not to say that additional things won't rear their ugly head, but I think that, you know, the risk has gone down as the timeline has continued, and Tom can speak more to that.
Yeah, I don't wanna belabor points about what's happened in the past because we're really dealing now with whether it's worthwhile to make these expenses. But I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned by this process, and I recognize this sort of had to be put together very quickly because of the surprise availability of the state grant and the short timeline in which it was offered. So all of this is understandable, but my understanding is also we don't yet have a formal agreement with the PAC in writing regarding how that $904,000 is gonna get into our hands, and I think that's a mistake. I think I hope that in the future, not that we're gonna have a lot of projects like this, but that they get papered a little better, and I won't belabor that point. Tom, in your slides, you said the design plans were completed in 2022. How close were those design plans to the ones that we're actually working with now?
Give it about 95%. That's what was used to generate the first set of cost estimates. It's kind of the chicken and the egg thing. As we were going through this, there were some preliminary plans and schematics, and they had a square footage that they were looking for. And we had some challenges, Jeff, you can agree with me, coming to agreement on what the cost of this building was gonna be. And that's why we pushed to have a final set of design plans that we could then get that third party estimate to come back and get us real numbers.
I could, we also pursued a number of grants at the time. And all of those grants, including, because there was actually federal money that was coming out, all of those grants, including the state grant, required that it be shovel ready, which means you had to have plans in hand. So we had to have those plans to try and get money from a lot of other sources rather than the state and the town,
And
we
those
kissed a lot of
plans
frogs.
included the new roof that covers both the addition and the bandstand?
The roof is just on the new addition, and it's the siding that's gonna cover
Okay.
both. But
And that was part of that original design.
that was part of that original design. That was when we look at the value engineering, it's not that anything was wrong, it's is there a way to save some money? And then what we did, the roofing that we did is we changed it from a standing seam metal roof to an asphalt roof. It's still very effective, and if we end up doing the solar, it's gonna make that much more sense.
I'm through.
Regina?
Given that we think we're past some of the structural and civil engineering risks, I think the point that Bert was bringing up, the contract risks that we're in right now, not even just on the next project, but I am concerned that there doesn't seem to be a in-contract way that the town is getting the money. It's not about anyone's good faith or anything, but that's a bad way to run a project that is about to be $3.1 million. And I assume that means that any money we've had to put out already has been town money. Because I guess we don't have a grant yet until there's a building. We don't have PAC money yet. So the town is floating the expenses that we already have. So I'm concerned about that, and I was wondering if anyone had any thoughts on how to get to something that's a little more concrete fast.
I can take a shot at that. I mean, we did as the chair have a Zoom call on some of these finer points yesterday, but the PAC stands ready to transfer the donations to the town on an agreed upon date. That's
So can we get an agreed to date?
I've got a better solution, actually, the chair does, which I think I'll let her tell you, but I think it's part of the motion to approve this. You would make the motion contingent upon that. It's a good point, and I think that's the direction that the chair wanted to go.
We had advice from council organized a call with Amy and we were working on language for that. And so we will propose adding it to changes to the motion tonight.
Yeah, there's an updated agenda submission at your place that has the additional motion, so there's 3 motions.
Just find where that is. Does everyone have that? I of
The
course-
idea behind the change is that we make the appropriation contingent on receipt of the full donated funds, but I would ask, I mean, because, you know, that covers us in one sense, but it doesn't in another because this project is so far along. Are there any, do we anticipate that there are any contingencies that the PAC might wanna place on the transfer of the donated money?
And I'm sorry, I'm not, maybe we are, but I'm not totally sure that we are out of the woods yet. Do we have a timing issue then? I don't know how soon we need to actually start signing contracts and spending money versus what the
The construction is actively moving forward right now. We're
Okay.
very quickly coming up upon our threshold of what we have in terms of funding, so we wanna make sure that we don't have, you know, we don't, if we stop, we can't stop if we're gonna make our deadline, which is the end of June.
So that just brings me back to just from assume for the rest of this sentence that we are going to referendum and approving. Just play that exercise with me. Do we have money that is not the town's money in time to spend, everyone who needs to get paid because we're working, and also hold a referendum? Like, does that timeline work? Cause I'm not sure it does.
So we typically do for all of our capital projects, we spend before we have the cash in bank, cause most of our projects are bonded projects.
Sure.
So we float that money and then we reimburse ourselves. So this would essentially be the same process, except the reimbursement is coming from the PAC instead of the bank.
I can add some context there in talking with council. When we pass the referendum, Amy's correct, we do that as a normal course, and before we authorize the signing of contracts, the town makes sure the money is committed. In other words, do they have a reasonable expectation that the money will be there? Amy did do that for the 2-7, and she did convey that information to Art Wallace and I when we had a separate conversation. That was confirmed by council. So there was a reasonable expectation that Amy could authorize, or Mark, whoever, I don't know who did the signature, that that could be authorized. That said, council did recommend to us going forward that we design a policy, just to your point, on what it means to have the funds committed, and he recommended for donated funds that it is only committed once they have been transferred to the town. And so I think going forward, we will make that change, or will recommend that we make that change and ask, we've already asked staff to draft a policy to that effect, which we'll be reviewing probably over next summer when we do our things. But in the interim, council did recommend, and this is town council recommend, that we change the motion if we vote to put this forward to referendum, to include a contingency that the appropriation is only approved upon the receipt of the full $904,000. One question we do have has and I know everyone in the PAC, I've worked with everyone, but that said, like Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. Has anyone verified from the town that you have the money? Do we have any paperwork verifying that the money is in hand?
I'll let Jeff speak to that. Their fundraising is still continuing, so as of a few days ago, the answer was no. We can get the verification at whatever sum certain they have, but
No, we have the money, we have the cash in hand now. Our fundraising is continuing to go because we committed to our donors that 25% of what we raised was gonna go to what goes on the stage, because they keep saying, we're contributing to a public building, why are we doing that? And we said, no, 25% of this is gonna go towards what goes on the stage, right?
Are you referring to 25% of the
25% of what we raised in our Next Act capital campaign goes to what goes on the stage. We can take more risk than a town can take, but we can't completely take crazy risk. We need to have cash in hand to sign contracts with entertainers to come and perform at our site.
I understand, but now I don't know where the numbers are, because I don't know how much money you
Well, that's
raised.
why we're continuing, that's why when Mark said we're continuing to fundraise, because both things are true. that we are continuing to fundraise and we have the cash in hand in our accounts. We have the money.
But
The 904, but we are continuing to fundraise.
but the 900.
So let me ask the question this way though, if we were
Yeah.
to set up an escrow account tomorrow and you guys were gonna put money in, would you be putting the 904 in?
We can.
Okay, so your commitment about the 25% wouldn't affect that.
That's
What I'm
That's
hearing
what
is
I
the
agree.
PAC
That's what-
has additional priorities that they're fundraising for. So the
Right.
question of are you fundraising, it sounds like you're potentially fundraising.
We're always fundraising.
that's where things get confusing
I got you, okay.
because they'll say that we're still fundraising, but no, we've hit our goals.
Gotcha.
We haven't.
So
Yeah, but we're continuing because we have other
This-
goals.
We can't do to the taxpayers though is just leave them open and then they become, I'll go back to Tom's LIFO FIFO. They become the first line of defense when there's a decision that someone makes to not fund. So I look, I understand the plight that you're in to try to get this right, but like I think we have to commit to a certain amount of money that should go into an escrow or whatever it is as this whole thing happens.
because it's it is a measure of protection to say we're not gonna extend the appropriation, we're not gonna give the supplemental appropriation until the money comes in. But we're already working on the project. And my next question would be, well, what happens to this project if this board doesn't approve the supplemental appropriation, or if we do and it fails at referendum, or if the contributions somehow don't come through? What happens?
It's not pretty, to be honest. We have two different places that we could end up. And there's a couple of finer points, but first one is we absolutely strip this down to the absolute bare bones that meets the requirements to receive our state grant. And there was requirements about it being a building and having this square footage, and we would work with them to find out what can we provide. So it may be that there's no interior bathrooms. It would be the bare bones to make sure we can get a certificate of occupancy so that we can receive our grant funding. And then at a later date, somebody, however, would have to distill that back to what it would be. Absolute worst case is we say we can't meet our grant requirements. The state says, without the siding, without the roof, without certain amenities, we don't feel this is a complete project, which is what they were sold on when we started it. In which case we would essentially build some level of concrete pad. We would probably build the exterior bathroom portion, and it would be set up so the trailers in the future would be hidden behind a wall. It would be the full-time public restrooms on a concrete pad. And that's the absolute worst case, and I'm saying that because my job is to be plan B, C, D. I don't think we would end up there.
But again, that case becomes a reality if we pass the resolution as we've written it today, which has a contingency to protect the town, but leaves open the possibility that we don't get the money from the PAC for reasons we can't foresee.
Right. And those pie charts, all of a sudden with 2/3 of the pie gone, get pretty skinny.
And so it behooves the town at this point to get hold of that money as quickly as possible.
That is a best practice. When we did the Veterans Memorial, the project was not permitted to begin until we had the money in hand. So going forward, we will make that part of all of our motions if a motion comes in before we've done the policy, but it is anticipated that change will be made immediately going forward.
Maybe you guys could go out in the hallway and work this out.
Oh, we are gonna need a date certain when we get that money.
We do have a date certain, Chair, that's the end of February, because the PAC has got some short-term investments on the cash that they've raised.
I'm sorry,
So
February and it's invested currently? I thought this was cash in hand. Those are
I think it's CDs. Jeff, can you speak to the cash time?
We can do it much quicker.
They can do it quick.
It's in a money market fund.
We can do it quicker.
That's
'Cause our
24
CDs
hours,
came
thank
due.
you.
Thank you.
24 hours.
Cause our CDs
A
came.
couple of days, cause you
Okay.
gotta
Give us a
call the
couple of
guy.
days.
Right. Okay, thank you. That's the
We don't-
answer
we
we
don't
wanted
do
to hear,
It
thank you.
it really is, thank you for
I would say that we had some CDs, and as we're always trying to raise money, that was the easiest money we could raise. But it's all in money market now.
Okay,
Okay,
awesome,
thank you.
thank you.
And Jeff, is it more than the 904 now?
No,
9:04.
9:04.
So then we're gonna have to change the amount that I gave them because I did the million minus the 100,000, cause we're talking about 100,000.
Okay.
So that'll have to change on the.
Okay, well, before we take the motion, we'll take a break and you can rewrite it, cause I will not be able to do that on the fly. I do have a question, if members could please pull out the July 14th agenda item from the Board of Selectmen. Tom, we had requested in advance of this meeting an updated capital project sheet, do we have that?
I'm gonna give them the resolution too.
Amy, could you email one to Art?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have other documents we requested? And the original capital project sheet, so so Tom, I just wanna make sure as we go through this, and the initial project sheet did not have planning and engineering, it had 0 for that. Now, because we are crediting the PAC's contribution of the 128, that is now part of the cost of the project. So that has changed. The construction is 2.8 and that gets us 225 in contingency and 3170. So
I 128 has been spent. Tom, is that how you, I had the 128, I didn't put all of this together and we did a quick. Yeah, based on Mark's representation to us, the TPAC is not contributing 1 million in cash, they are doing 900 in cash, and we're crediting the 128 that has been spent, and that was part of the original capital project. I know, first of all, Tom and Adam are wonderful with numbers in doing this, and I did have an opportunity to watch Adam's presentation in July, which was excellent, as it was Tom's tonight. But at that hearing, when they went through they presented 2 scenarios. And the first scenario. Yeah, and I can maybe jump right to it, and Adam, correct me if I'm wrong. The 128 wasn't included in either of those things.
I believe it was for the second. Scenario B, it assumes only 904 in donation funding. Scenario 1 assumed the full 1 million and not crediting the 124. But the bottom line is today, the project includes 128 in design fees, and that is paid with an in-kind contribution by the PAC that has been spent. Take that off the 3170. We have 2.8 in construction and 225 left. I just wanna make sure everyone's on the same page. Is that correct, Mark, your understanding? Okay. Does anyone think differently?
I believe, and kind of catch me off guard, that 128 was meant to capture the construction administration costs.
So we had asked Mark to include the design in the new project sheet, so where is that, Mark?
Gotta defer to Tom on the project cost total, Chair.
No, this is why we had the confusion to begin with. If the PAC is going to put in an extra $1 million and the 128 was spent outside of this whole thing, the total project cost for this is not 13170, it's 32 whatever, I can't even do
I'm
that.
not sure that's right.
I don't think that's right, Chair. This is the point that
Because
we've
the
gone through a number of times. With
No, he's
respect-
saying that's not the number, he said that's a different number.
Oh, well then,
That would be a problem. So we need to know the specifics of what the costs are today. We have the design, which was 128,000, is that correct?
That's correct.
That comes, we reduced that from 3170. Where is that design shown on the capital project sheet? Is that under architects? It's showing 0, where is that?
But I would tell you on the one that Tom just handed out, the 128 is essentially the construction administration
What you had is 145,
Yeah.
sorry.
We rounded, yeah. We included, I think that includes the future as part of the
So
contingency.
Tom, we are only getting 900 for the PAC because the town has credited the 128 spend. So that means that's off your 3,100. You don't have that to spend. You don't have that 1 million. You're short what was credited.
Chair, we're using the 100, that's the 100 as opposed to the 128 is the 100,000 that we've made that clear. So it's
I don't
100,000.
understand what you're saying. Why is it 100?
Can we take it from the other side? What's the all-in cost of the project now? I think
Art,
it's
if we
$3
could
million.
start, Tom, start with the bid amount, because the bid amount is, the chair is asking for the total project cost inclusive of the design work, which was 128. I'm looking at this from, what was the bid amount for the contract that was signed? And the 128, which was the 100 was prior to that, I mean.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, again, we can look at it different ways, but the numbers that I provided to Tom this morning for this bid was using essentially the 124 with a little rounding up to come up with the 128.
For what?
That's for the construction administration and work during construction.
Okay, so where is the design cost that is being taken off the 1 million? It's been spent. That's included in the 1 million that they're contributing. They were saying that's part of it. 3170 cost. It's being credited. They don't have to do another million. They only have to do 900 because we're crediting it. I'm not seeing it in the expenditures. I think we're 100,000 short. Which was what Amy had pointed out in the meeting with council. Amy, is that your understanding as well?
We are fine on the appropriation, the cash. If Tom can't value engineer the 100,000, the cash will be short 100,000.
Even if we approved a resolution that went to referendum for the 388.
You're talking about additional value engineering.
No, the current, they get credit for the value engineering, which is the 100,000, so then theoretically Tom has 288.
So
Could we go to the slide that had the timeline? I think
Yeah.
it was one of Tom's slides. Apologies if I'm gonna slow things down a little bit. So in by December of 2022, someone had to get paid to make design plans. Okay, so in 2022, someone, Colliers,
Colliers, yeah.
okay, got paid how much and by whom? Do we know?
Something over $100,000.
There's been at least 3 different numbers that are somewhere around 100,000.
People are using 128 to make the math work.
Okay. So
We paid them slightly in excess of $100,000 for the design plans at the time.
Okay.
As we've talked about this project over the years, right? We had special meetings in July and we had Mark come to our board meeting in July. And the reason that we talked about value engineering is because we wanted to end that conversation about, is the $100,000 in? Is the $100,000 out?
Thank you,
Because
Jeff.
we have had that conversation a million times. So we said, Tom was good enough, value engineered at the time it was $119,000 worth of savings in that project. Our board said, yes, great, if you can find more, find more. So we can stop this conversation about, is the $100,000 for design in this or is it not in, because we've taken $100,000.
I think I'm
off the
hearing it
cost.
come up in 2 different ways. I'm hearing it come up in terms of the total cost of the project, which I think is what you just answered. When we add all of this up, this is moot because we've done value engineering, and I hear that. What I think I'm hearing from the table here is trying to understand how that $100,000 or so and a $1 million or so commitment from the PAC, what does that leave the expectation of what would be in the escrow account tomorrow, if I can oversimplify that? That seems to be why we're.
Well, 2 questions. So one, what is the amount that would go in the escrow? And we think that's 904. But the question is, we value engineered the project. Why was that applied to the PAC and not to the town?
I would say it absolutely wasn't. Everything valued engineered was accounted for just in the presentation and it's coming off the top. It's not coming off of anybody's one payment or anything else.
But the PAC is now, instead of paying $1 million, they're paying $900. The town could, instead of paying $850, pay $750, right? What am I missing?
No, I think Amy was heading down the right road with her explanation, so.
Chair, are you implying that there is an assumption that the PAC should raise another 100,000 when we
No, I don't care what you agreed to, I'm just trying to understand what was agreed to. What was passed at referendum was the PAC would raise 1 million, the town would raise 850, and the state would do 900,000, right? What I'm hearing now is that the PAC is going to put 900,000 into the town's coffers when at referendum we were told it was gonna be 1 million. So I'm trying to understand how that decision was made.
So the referendum question, the narrative part, forget the math for the minute, was that they would raise the 1,032,000 and they did that. So this isn't a question that's open to interpretation. The PAC raised that money and if you add their payment for the preliminary work and their 904 that they're giving us, they've met that.
But that's my question. The 124 was not included in this project. That was done separately. So the 124 is now being credited for it, and council has said you may do that, but that leaves less out of the 2.7.
It doesn't, if you value engineer it, and that's to Jeff's point, at the board meeting we went to, it's a PAC in July, prior to my reporting to the
No,
board of
precisely,
Selectmen.
it does not, but
We
then,
just took it out of the project, so
but if something is taken out of the project, why does it reduce the PAC's obligation and not the town's? That's all I'm trying to get at.
I think if there's savings in the project over an appropriation, that as Art had indicated in the recommendation to amend your motion before you tonight, that you are correct. Those dollars would inure to the town taxpayers because we're being asked to appropriate the money. If on the other hand, the PAC is being asked to say, we don't need these particular additions to the project, that's a decision that they made and it should inure to the credit of their contribution. And that was what my interpretation of the legal opinion was.
Okay, so hold on. So,
I guess so, guys, the way I'm thinking about this is if you took the engineering saves out and you took the other, whatever they were, planning fees out, because those two should net against each other, everything should look exactly the same, meaning that the PAC should be giving $1 million. Because basically what you've done is you've taken out 120 that was extra cost and you took out 120 of extra save. Everything else should stay exactly the same, but it looks like the PAC is dropping by 100. So it looks like we're like double counting the funding of that, and the PAC is paying less now.
so
I'm not quite sure how
the sheet that we've got right now says that all in, if this is approved and it goes to referendum and it passes, right? If this is approved, this whole thing is going to cost $3,170,881. I can get to that math if I use a number from the PAC of $1,032,881. Okay. I can't get to that number if I include that in 2022 Collier's got 120 some odd thousand. If I add that number to the budget, I have a project that actually is costing everyone over all of this time $3,299,566. And I think it's important because if that's actually the cost of the budget, then the referendum, assuming it passes, we approve it and everyone likes it, needs another $128,000 that does not seem to be currently included in the capital sheet. And I'm concerned about that for two reasons. One, because that is an additional $128,000 that needs to be added to that. And two, it says to me that maybe we're not yet out of getting clarity on what our scope is. And maybe we're not actually out of the engineering risks because there's some confusion about what the scope is. And I think that is broadly the question I'd like to get some clarity on.
Did we put up the other page in the deck that had more of the numbers, Tom, you were walking through? Keep going. That one. So this has all your costs in it, right? Like, so if I add everything up on the left, this is where you get to the 289,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And this nets everything out. So like this is, I don't care. I saved money on value engineering. I spent money on an admin cost, right? Like, so it's got everything in there.
Yes.
So now I'm at 289, then you flip the page. Because I think you added some more costs on the next, or maybe it's the next page after that. There was another, this is part of the 388 it showed, I thought there was a page that showed that part of the 388 is already gonna get spent. You said we're gonna add some other things in.
Wait, I think it was the next slide, one slide
The
over.
next slide is without the numbers.
So
Those are
this one here,
yes.
there was one with numbers on it though, right? I guess I'm not seeing that. So it seemed like there was another, I don't even know what the number is, like,
Yeah, I think it was the
Probably another
other way
100,000.
about the sprinklers and the fire separation, maybe if you're thinking of that one.
Adam, when you presented in July, you presented in a way that reflected what Regina just said. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it was more of a statement of fact of numbers on
Right.
spreadsheets. But yeah, that had the scenario B that you referenced that looked at it from not acknowledging design costs, and it was just a,
And in that situation, we were really looking at a contingency of about 1%, which caused you some
yeah, at that time
raise of
with,
concern.
yeah, with our assumptions at that time before breaking ground.
But if we assume that that was not part of the program, just as Regina explained, then we would have 6% if we assume the PAC was going to do the full 1 million. So that's where Regina's concern and my concern, Regina stated it much more eloquently than I, is are we $128,000 short? Cause from our math, it looks like we are.
I think Regina's math was accurate. And it's a question of what it's two different ways and Mark is correct in what legal said, which is they met their obligation, but there is still a gap of that obligation. And so if it comes to fruition and we want our full 6% contingency, assuming we go forward with 388 and everything passes, that gap would have to be filled in somehow.
Yeah, so I don't have a problem with that. I just wanna make sure we understand as a group that the 128 now is part of the 3,100. It's not 3,100 plus 128. Is everyone in agreement with that?
I thought
Sure,
I just
part of
heard
the 388.
Tom say that
Right.
if we get the 388 in the appropriation, we're still gonna be short $128,000. Is that what you just said?
In funding sources, yes.
Well, why would we approve
Clarity.
an appropriation that we know to be short by over $100,000? I mean, why would you ask us to do that?
Well, said another way, I just think you're gonna immediately eat up your contingency, cause your contingency is like $120, cause 6% of 3 million is 180,000, right? So, so you're gonna basically, you've already eaten up your contingency, a good chunk of it.
So are some of those other numbers in there that we identified are essentially contingency items that we identified, known contingencies. We have just under 200,000, assuming we go forward with the 388 in contingency.
Right, exactly, no, I get it, so it's somewhere
Yeah,
around
fully funded.
200,000 is your contingency, but you're gonna eat up half of it because we have a shortfall, so you really only have like a 3% contingency, you only have like half of it,
Without,
right?
yeah,
'Cause we're not actually funded to 3.2, I think is what everyone's saying, we're actually funded to 3.1.
Yes.
Right. So our board does not have the ability, once the appropriation passes a referendum or the vote, to value engineer, but the Board of Selectmen does. And so what will happen in that situation is it will have to be value engineered back down because we are short 128,000. So that is our expectation with this number. I am sorry that or the PAC will have to raise additional money, maybe you wanna add the cabinets and you do that as a separate thing. You get to see the certificate of occupancy. Some stuff can be raised at a later time, it can be done later.
We're getting all the furniture's donated, we're fully expecting that it's gonna take.
So that may be,
Years and effort to
that was like
finish the design.
$40,000, so that's one way to get close to that. So, but you'll have to do some further value engineering. I just wanna make sure everyone's,
Which means that the bullet third up from the bottom is not a risk in the project. It is, if we get 388K through referendum, a reality. Right? 388 only gets us if we actively go do the value engineering. Is that right?
some
In
amount,
order,
yes.
in order to actually add back into the project all the value engineering, we would need to have 388 plus 128.
That third bullet up, the adding back in the siding, because there still is a roughly $70,000.
Can you if you're 128K short? Is still the piece that I,
Right. No, I'm with you.
can you if you're 128K short? Not meant rhetorically, actually, like, no, okay. So we are not giving Tom enough money with 388K to do everything on this slide. Right?
Well, yeah, he's not at a 6% contingency, he's at a 3, he needs another $100,000 to be at a 6% contingency, 120, something like that.
Like it or not, like, again, I don't know that this is gonna pass, but if we're gonna spend all of this time on it, we should be talking about a number that lets us talk about everything on the slide, which I think is 388K plus 128K, right?
60. Or we could call it 100, or we don't know what the
I don't
amount
like
is.
rounding to 100K when we've got at least 3 different versions.
So that's fine, we can do the numbers correctly, I'm just using it so we can have the conversation.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I mean it a little facetiously, but
But I think it would be good to have
But
that.
hold on, but if we ask for 488, so now if we went from 388 to 488, because now we want to get to a true 6% contingency, the town just funded the PAC spending $100,000 less.
Yes.
at the very least, the town is part of the cost of this building being another $100,000 more. So.
I think that's where we are. Okay. Another question I have on the operating. Do you anticipate the PAC will use the 3 public bathrooms at all on the outside?
My understanding of the bathrooms on the outside, they're gonna be maintained by the town.
So PAC will never use those bathrooms, is that my understanding? That you know about, because you can't use them during events because they're too close to the green room.
They're not there for us. They're there for the playground, they're there for the dog park, they're there for the trail. I can't envision a circumstance. We will never use them on a structured basis. I can't guarantee that one of my board members won't use them sometime. But we will
As a
never
member,
use,
but the intent was that was for the
the intent
playgrounds,
was
okay.
always to service
Okay.
other things.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Right.
So thank you
But
for
to
that.
not put another building down there that was gonna eat up more of the parking places that are already too short, and another building that has to be maintained, but included in one building where people can see it, find it, and it's convenient. That was the thinking at the time, and I think we were all in agreement at the time.
So the funding sources for the current project, based on the new project sheet, is 500,000 from capital reserve approved in the fiscal year 2025 budget in May 2024, 900,000 in grants, 350 prior authorization for the bathrooms. This says donations 1 million, but it's not, it's 904 in donations and a credit of 128 for the spend that you did in design. And 388 for a supplemental appropriation. Do I have any of that wrong?
I think the number from us is more 932 rather than 904, but I don't wanna open the can of worms again. It's very close, we're in the ballpark.
904?
I think ours would be slightly more than the 904, but I don't.
We would love any more than 904.
But you
Well,
said
Well, I mean, and I would address your point too of like why in our summer negotiations, why was the PAC credited with the discounts? Because we're donors. We're donating. This is a town facility that in 3 years, if I'm not on this board anymore, I've got a ton of my money in this building. It's for the town, it's for
Yeah,
the,
I'm not questioning whether
Yeah.
it's the right or wrong thing to do, we just didn't know.
okay.
We did not know the funding source, and when was this decision, we've got two members of the Board of Selectmen, when did you decide to do this? If you could just clarify that for the public so that we understand when that decision was made.
When did we decide to give them the credit
Yeah.
for, that was done at our July Board of Selectmen meeting.
Okay, and the amount.
When we moved forward with the ability to move forward with the project at the time with the information that we knew at that time, prior to knowing about the fire sprinkler system and the fire hydrant that is needed. Including the value engineering that Tom had done at that time. So,
And that's why you approved the amount for the project at 2.6 million, not the 2.7, because it involved the credit amount.
correct.
Okay, so clarifying all that, so now we know what is authorized, okay.
Right, and they were meeting their obligation according to,
Not saying
yes.
that's right or wrong,
Yes,
we
but that
just
is what we
need to
knew.
know, all, from our perspective, all we know is that we're gonna be short 128,000.
Well, yeah, so this has been gnawing at me now for 20 minutes, but the expenditure for design in 2022 was a little over 100,000. It was not 128,000. Right? So that to the extent that the PAC committed to contribute $1,032,000, then the amount that remains to be contributed is more than 904,000, even though Tom was prompting me to say 904 before. It was it's because that's the number we had at the last meeting, but as you said, it's probably more like 930,000.
More like that.
It's just, I agree, this is really important to get this done. And it's very disconcerting that we don't have hard numbers coming into this meeting. It's hard for me to just go ahead and say and bless everything that's still up in the air. And it bothers me too that we approved the appropriation a year ago for $1 million coming from the PAC and didn't know that $100,000 of that money had been spent in December of 2022, a year and a half earlier.
I think there are lessons learned from this going back. I know, as Mark mentioned, some of this, he came into the situation, some of this was negotiated by a prior administration and a grant came in very quickly. But I think we have an opportunity to look at our process going forward and how can we make improvements going forward. And I think we've all seen the importance of writing things down, making sure we have hard numbers. We will make some of if this motion passes, we will make some of those corrections by the motion. We'll take a 10-minute break in a minute and we'd like you guys to come up with a date certain. The date should be in January. So pick the date so that we can add it for our motion and then we'll go and do that. We need to know how much on the new project sheet is coming from the PAC and will be deposited on January 1st, because that may change the number that Amy wrote on, I haven't looked at the.
If he says it's 932, then it's right.
Pardon?
If he says it's 932, then your motion is correct.
But let me just ask one more question before we break. We heard a presentation, it was really good. And it says we get the 388 and we've got a 6% contingency and we get this stuff done because we've done some creative value engineering, which I am sure was hard and difficult and also clever and prudent and wise. But now, as Art has pointed out, the contingency is really 3%. Are you comfortable, are you really comfortable going forward with that?
3% is not ideal.
Is not what?
Ideal.
Okay, so now I think we need Bob. What we'll do is take a 10-minute break and we'll get Bob DiCrescenzo on the phone and see what we can do to what options we would have if there's, what we don't wanna do is get this project done, oops, we need 100,000. We heard from bond council, we need to do a second referendum, not good, right? So let's try and resolve this tonight if we can. I know we're on a tight timeline with the Registrar of Voters. They were hoping we will decide one way or another tonight. So my recommendation is we take a 10-minute break, pick a date certain and an amount to make sure we've got our motions right. Let's get the motions right. We'll give a call to Bob DiCrescenzo and say, what can we do? There's a 3%, what happens if there's an overage? Is there anything we can do? Amy, use your, I don't know if there's anything you can pull out of the hat at this point because we're stuck with a bond council's thing. One thing we could do, and I'm not saying it's a good thing to do, but I am putting it out there, the line to the PAC, that, what is that, 200,000?
175,000, yeah.
Could that be done as part of, pull that out of the project and do that as part of the 2027 budget? Would that get you to the CO or no? That would not.
Well, again, we could fund that as a separate project because again, the hydrant is not gonna be up at Iron Horse. The hydrant would be in the far back corner, adjacent to where the shed is now, the barn. And that was identified not as a need for this particular project, but as we were discussing bringing in the fire service for this addition, our fire marshal was very clear that he's always saw that as a security concern. And he brought up the event, well, when we launch a lot of fireworks back there.
Right.
You know, fire marshal, fireworks, you know, and he brought in the fact that the other thing would be as an event is either just starting or leaving and we have the congestion in traffic, if there was a car fire back there, they can't get a fire truck back there. But if they had a hydrant, that would afford them the ability either to get back with one of their small utility trucks or even somebody runs down with a hose. It's giving them access to water. So it's really a separate project and it could be interpreted that way.
The other question, and I know your board can't answer this from the PAC yet, cause you would need board approval from the PAC, but with the, at 3%, would the board PAC be willing to chip in to, if we run into an unforeseen thing, help with the contingency? You may not be able to, I don't know. I'm just putting out all the options concerned there. So again, during the 10-minute break, if that would be one thing you would discuss, cause we're gonna have to figure out what to do tonight. We'll take it without objection. Are there any questions before we take a 10-minute break? Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll reach out to council, get him back. It might be less than 10 minutes. We'll ask you all to come up with your numbers so that, get Amy the hard motion so that she can reprint them if we need to. And then we'll reconvene once we have that information. Can we shut the door?
Let's just repass this.
Thank you. Are there any motions that need to happen to pause the public hearing or anything like that?
No, I'll take a motion to,
Except that we have money.
We weren't in public there.
we're still in the hearing.
Oh,
So we will take a motion to pause the public hearing, amend the agenda and move out the, okay?
Good.
Alright, so we're gonna wave to SCTV and let them know we're reconvening after our break.
So I move that we pause the public hearing on the PAC so that our actuary can explain the second big mystery of the night in Romeo.
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. We will then
I abstained.
Yeah.
I wasn't here to begin with, neither was Lolita. As
No, as far as
you're
the-
pausing the public hearing.
Yes,
Yeah,
so
okay.
Lalitha and we'll have Lalitha and Mike abstain from that motion. And we will go forward with our actuary. I wanna thank Jen for being here. And she will be conveying some good news, long-term good news, maybe some short-term
Short-term good news. Would
challenges.
you like me to go over the budget numbers for fiscal 27 first?
Yeah, why don't we start with that?
So
Which
there's
one is
4
that?
single pages.
Yep, which one?
Doesn't matter which one you start with.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we're gonna go over the budget numbers for the 3 pension plans as well as the OPEB plan. The pension budget numbers are final and based on actual results. The OPEB, we got the data a little bit later than we were hoping for. I got preliminary results this afternoon. They have not been peer reviewed yet, so I'm not sharing them with you. I'm gonna give you some results based on estimates. All early indicators say that the point to the actuals being a little bit less than these estimates, so that's a good thing. Alright, so the first one we're gonna go over today is the Board of Education pension plan. And let me just put that one in front of myself so I can actually read. Alright, so all four of these, I have four single pages for each plan, just going over the numbers basically. The first column in every page is the last year's results, and then we have some scenarios for this year. The baseline reflects just updating the census information as of July 1st, 2025, as well as the investments. So it reflects anything that happened from July 1st, 2024 to July 1st, 2025. For the Board of Education plan, there was a slight liability gain, so that means that the liability did not grow as much as we expected it to, mainly due to lower than expected salary increases and some data updates that were provided to us by the board. Compound this with a strong investment year, 11% return on the pension during the year as compared to our 6.5% assumption. These two combined factors cause the unfunded liability to go down by more than expected. So you can see that the funded ratio increased from 72.1% last year to 74.2% this year before any other changes. We are recommending a small update to the mortality assumption. So if you'll recall, about 5 years ago, I was here talking about a much bigger update to the mortality assumption. The Society Actuaries 5 years ago came out with the first ever mortality plan assumptions for public plans, specific to public plans. They have committed to updating that assumption, those tables on about every 5 to 6 year basis. So here we are, they've come up with the most recent table. Not much to report on that update. It reduced the liability by about 0.5%, 1% or so, and reduced the contribution from $1.45 million to $1.41 million, so a $40,000 reduction in the contribution. So all in, the actually determined contribution for fiscal year 27 for the Board of Ed plan is just over $1.41 million, so a slight reduction from last year. That's the Board of Ed plan. That's the OPEB, let's do the 3 pension plans first, okay. So this is the general government pension plan. Again, a similar scenario, except for on the liability side, there was a bit of a loss due to fewer terminations than expected, so fewer people terminated employment and fewer people passed away during the year. So to the extent people don't continue to live, it's great news for them, but it's a longer obligation for the plan, so it costs more money. But that was a minor loss, but that was more than offset by the strong investment returns during the year. Again, 11% return for across all the pension plans. So on the baseline, the funded ratio increased from 71% last year to 73% this year, and flows through to a contribution of $1.55 million. There was a plan change that was negotiated for the ASME collective bargaining unit during the year, and that plan change was to include overtime in the pensionable earnings calculation up to 10% of base salary, and that increase was partially offset by negotiating that employee contributions must continue on to 30 years of service regardless of retirement age. Prior to that, employee contributions were stopping at normal retirement age, even if they hadn't maxed out at their 30 years of service cap. Okay, so the pensions calculated a service cap of 30 years, but members were allowed to stop contributing once they hit their normal retirement age, even though they were continuing to accrue additional service. So that's no longer happening as part of the negotiations. All in all, that increased the liability by about $400,000 and resulted in an increase in the contribution of $40,000. Again, the same mortality update recommendation will bring the contribution down roughly $35,000 or so to $1.55 million. So pretty much a flat contribution year over year. Some ups and downs due to different things, but at the end of the day, the contribution is flat from last year to this year.
Okay.
Any questions
So
there?
too flat.
Too flat.
And then police.
On the police side, some better news here. There were some gains on the liability side, offset by some losses, but overall it was a gain on the liability. And again, another strong 11% investment return. So on the baseline, the funded ratio went up slightly from 79.3% to 80.9%. And the contribution actually went down from 1.3 million to just under 1.2 million for the year. With the mortality update, the contribution for the police plan actually goes up a bit. The mortality study did show for public safety, longer expectation of living than the previous study did, just by a smidge. So increased the liability slightly, therefore increased the contributions slightly. But still, overall, the contribution is down from $1.3 million last year to just under $1.2 million this year.
So overall, very positive news.
Overall, very positive.
Okay.
At roughly 80% funded for all three plans, so in a good position.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so those are the three pension plans, those are actual real numbers. On the OPEB plan, a little bit more going on. As you know, for OPEB, we only do a full valuation every 2 years, so this is the full year. So I have an extra set of numbers here. I have the 2023 valuation, that was the last full valuation. We do an interim calculation in the off year that reflects updated asset performance, but only uses a projection of the liability. And then we have three scenarios for 2025 to discuss here. The first, being the baseline, again, I can't speak to demographic gains or losses yet because we haven't finalized those numbers, but all things indicate that there will be demographic gains. So the liability will be lower than expected, probably by roughly $1 million. So instead of 25 million, about roughly a $24 million liability for the year. The OPEB plan is overfunded. It's at 108% funded on the baseline. You've been contributing to a trust. I'm gonna get to this a little bit more in the next presentation. You've been contributing to the trust for many years, and we are one of the best funded OPEB plans in the state, top 5%. So on the baseline, we're seeing a contribution go from $1 million 2 years ago to about $922,000 last year.
Where are you on the chart, just can you point to that?
So on the base, we're on the ADC calculation. Can I zoom in on this?
Laser.
Oh. So this line right here.
Okay.
So just over $1 million 2 years ago to 922 this year. I know these numbers are really small, I apologize for that. To about $828,000 this year on the baseline. There's two potential changes to the actuarial methods I'd like to discuss and recommend making going forward. The first is to introduce the actuarial smoothing of assets to the OPEB. We do this for the pension, and for those of you that are a little bit newer, just to give you a background of what actuarial smoothing is we don't recognize the market value of assets as of any given point in time. We smooth in market gains and losses over a 5-year period. So in any year, if there's a gain means you return above the 6.5% expectation. We'll only recognize 20% of that gain or loss in any given year and defer the other 80%. That is to help limit volatility in the contribution on a go-forward basis, and keep the budget more predictable and sustainable. We've been doing it for the pension for many, many years. We haven't introduced it to the OPEB plan yet. We were in accumulation mode for OPEB, but now that you're at 100% funded, it's time to start thinking about ways to limit volatility in the contribution going forward, so that you have a more predictable budget for this number. Now, of course, I mentioned fiscal year 25 was a strong year. There was a gain, 11% return versus a 6.5% assumption. So if we were to introduce actuarial value of assets this year, we're only going to recognize 20% of that gain. So the actuarial value of assets is actually less. So if you look up here, on a market value basis, the assets are 27.1 million. On an actuarial value basis, it's about 26.1 million. So deferring $1 million of gains. What that means is the contribution would be higher this year, but those gains will help to offset future losses or future potential losses in the future and smooth out
Yeah, I
that
was just gonna
volatility.
say, you've got some crystal ball I don't know about.
And if there's future gains, then it'll just continue to, it'll continue to just build that cushion.
Instead of the peaks and valleys
It
of
won't have the
Right.
peaks and valleys, it'll be a little bit more predictable.
Hence the smoothing.
Which is
Right.
important when it comes to OPEB because OPEB liabilities are much more volatile than pension liabilities because OPEB liabilities are driven by healthcare costs. And as we know, healthcare costs are growing really quickly right now and it's not anticipated that they're gonna slow. And part of your plans are self-insured by the town, and so those claims can be unpredictable from one year to the next. So anything you can do to minimize that volatility and mitigate that volatility is good. So while it may cause the contribution to go up this year, over the baseline, yes.
I'm gonna show my ignorance of this entire subject. This isn't soil, so I have questions. So for smoothing our gains and losses, we have a gain this year. The money that would be in the gain that we're not smoothing back in, where's that money?
It's still in the OPEB trust. We're just not recognizing it on paper for the calculation.
for our
For purposes
contribution.
of how much we contribute to the plan this year.
So
OPEB
it
trust has-
exists in the bucket of money,
It
but
is
when
a-
we do
yeah.
the calculation to say how much more money do we need to put in, we don't account for all of it.
And so the fund is now further overfunded for this year.
But the reason why we do that is we have seen the market plummet 24%. And we would not recognize that immediate loss, it would be a fifth of that loss. And so where this really benefits us is during the dips in the market.
Right, or other crazy anomalies that impact, right, that draw on these funds,
Plague.
i.e. COVID, right? Like stuff
So
happens.
So the actual amount of the money in the bucket is affected by the market, but our adjustment for the following year is not 100% impacted by that 1 year.
Yes, we smooth it over 5 years so that we have less peaks
Got
and
it.
And you
valleys.
said it was something not about soil, come on, it's a big roller.
There you go.
And if you were 75% of the other municipalities in the state of Connecticut, it wouldn't matter because if you were 25% funded, losing 10-20% of your assets, it's not gonna make a big difference on that overall calculation as you're at 107%. Losing 10% of 2.27 million,
Yeah.
it's gonna make a big difference. It's gonna drop you below almost below 100%, and now your contribution changes drastically. So
Okay.
that's what helps.
So in terms of the smoothing formula,
Yeah.
is that based on an established policy?
Yeah, it's a very common practice. It's a GFOA best practice to smooth assets. It's I wouldn't say GFOA, it's
GASB or the,
public
right,
the public funding entity it's best practice. It's common. It wasn't necessary before as you were accumulating money in this trust, but now that the trust is so well funded. And it went from not very well funded to very well funded in a very short period of time due to really strong investment returns over the last few years, and some changes to the healthcare plans that helped to reduce the liability. So it was a compounding effect. So we're here now, and we want to react as quickly as possible. So while it would increase the contribution for this year, it will help to limit volatility in future years. So it's a kind of long-term forward-thinking.
spend to save.
Yes, exactly.
Thank
And
you.
Lalitha, just so you know, for our pensions, we do a 5-year smoothing as
Okay.
well for those funds. So
This is
that's-
this is a recommendation just to get in line with the pension. Because the plan is so well funded and we're gonna, again, shortly talk about treating the trust as we do for the pension. So, we wanna take a similar approach for all the plans. So the last scenario here, and it's a little bit blocked by Art's black box up there, but it's okay, is changing the actuarial cost method. Now, I don't wanna get too deep into the weeds with you all here because I don't expect you to have a degree in actuarial science to understand this. But at the end of the day, the cost of the plan is what it is. And how we allocate those costs between past service, the upcoming years of service, and all future years of service, there is different methods that we can use in the actuarial world. What you're currently using is a method called projected unit credit. That's a method that's been in place for many years. What I'm recommending is changing to entry age normal. And the reason I'm making that recommendation, there's a couple of reasons. One is that's what you're using for pension, so let's get again on the same page for all of the plans. And two, entry age normal is what's required for your financial reporting for the audit at the year end. So why not calculate just one number as opposed to two? Because two numbers confuses people. Because you can see on a projected unit credit way, it's a $25.1 million liability. Under entry age normal, it's $25.8 million liability. And average people don't understand that. You have to be an actuary to understand that. And when you have numbers out in the public for the public to read, let's not confuse them and just use one single number. So again, it does increase the liability, it does deteriorate the funded status a bit and increase the contribution. But overall, it's a slight increase from last year. And the actual numbers are probably gonna get you back from that 993,000 here, closer to 900,000.
So with the projected unit credit methodology, why was that used in the past if the entry age was the one that?
Because quite honestly, projected unit credit is a more appropriate cost method for OPEB benefits because OPEB benefits are not driven by salary. Entry age normal is a level percentage of pay, so it accrues the benefit on paper for this method as a level percentage of pay. And for pension benefits, that makes sense because pension benefits are directly tied to your salary. Whereas for OPEB, it's not directly tied to your salary, so directly tied to the healthcare benefits that are offered. But GASB in its infinite wisdom required entry age normal as the mandate for financial reporting. So we have no choice but to use it for financial reporting. Doesn't mean you have to use it for funding, but we find that it's just less confusing for people to use the same basis for all. We haven't come with this recommendation in recent years because it does increase the contribution and the plan hasn't been as well funded. But now that we're at a point where we're really well funded, I thought it was a good time to think about introducing it.
So if for whatever reason, because we are not actuaries, you feel that we need to go back to the projected unit credit, will you be in a position to advise us as to if we were to if it were more appropriate for us to look at that number versus the other one?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I could do that.
Yeah.
So my recommendation would be to move all the way to the far right column and switch the actuarial value of assets and the entry age normal contribution cost method. Again, that results in a contribution of just under $1 million. These are preliminary. Again, the real numbers likely will be a little bit less than that.
So it's a $60,000 difference between the old way and the new way, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
So those are the budget numbers. So overall, all four plans combined, we are about flat. So that's good.
That's better than our 8% projections, so.
Yes. Okay, so moving to using the OPEB trust to pay the benefits, right? So I first just wanna kinda do a little table setting here, level setting for everybody. Why in the first place did the town?
Sorry, is there a way to make that larger,
maybe
cause I
there
can't
is.
read. No, Mike has come to my rescue. Just make that up.
Don't go on any untoward websites while you got that thing. I don't want Rick Pisano getting it right out to me.
So why?
You're on Tinder?
No.
So why did the town decide to start an OPEB trust in the first place all those years ago, right? So these are some of the reasons that went into the decision to start an OPEB trust. First, it provides for long-term cost savings to the plan, and that's the meat of what we're gonna talk about today. Because money in an OPEB trust has much more much more robust ability to be invested, and produce a meaningful return. Again, the OPEB trust this past year had about 11% return. We're valuing the viability at 6.5%. So to the extent the OPEB trust returns more than that, it's gonna help to reduce future costs. Also, your general fund cannot be invested that way, your health insurance fund's not being invested that way, so by not putting money into the trust, you're leaving money on the table. Now, the town has been putting money into the trust all these years, that's why you're at 100% funded, so that was one of the main reasons why you did that.
107%, don't take that 7% away from you.
The second is budget stability, right? And this is another thing we're gonna talk about today, is it's moving from unpredictable pay-as-you-go funding. And by pay-as-you-go funding, I mean, it means you're paying the claims as they come due. Those are flowing through your health insurance fund. They're being replenished through other mechanisms, but those are coming due. And because the pre-65, the retirees that are not yet eligible for Medicare, they're on health insurance plans that are self-insured by the town. So they're not fully insured through an insurance company, they're self-insured. So you're paying those claims. You have stop loss and other guardrails in place, but those claims can be quite volatile. And to pay those over year can add a lot of volatility to your budget. The actuarial contributing to the trust and using the trust to fund your benefits helps us smooth that, because we can use all these different actuarial mechanisms to limit that volatility there. Okay. Also, for the Medicare eligible retirees, you switched to a Medicare Advantage plan very recently. And Medicare Advantage premiums can be very volatile, believe it or not. I've seen other clients go from a couple $100s a month to $10 a month, and then back to a couple $100s a month. So that volatility is not something that's a friend of a municipal budget, right? So these are all the reasons. And the third one I want to talk about today, I just kind of briefly touch upon, is generational equity. When you talk about funding public retirement plans, you want the right generation of taxpayers footing the bill for the right people providing services to them now. So today's taxpayers are footing the bill for what you're putting into these funds. But if you're doing it to pay as you go funding, they're paying the bill for people who have already retired. They're not providing them with service right now. They're footing the bill for people who worked for the town 20 years ago, instead of footing the bill for the people who are working for the town and providing services today to provide for their retirement, their benefits in the future. So there's an inequity there with the current methods. Oh, it's not letting me switch to the next page now. Okay, so again, more level setting here. I just want to talk about the basic funding formula for any retirement plan. Is we know what the true cost of the plan is the total benefits that are going to be paid. You may use your trust to pay some expenses, nominal expenses. So we know what the benefits are. We can project what the benefits are using our actuarial techniques. We can project what the expenses are. We can estimate investment income based on our expected return on assets, based on the plan's target asset allocation. Then we solve for the contributions. So money in equals money out. That should always balance, okay? Right now, currently, the town is not doing this part. This is not coming out of the trust, so you're out of balance. That's how you've been able to get to 100% funded. That was intentional to get to accumulate the funds to get where we are today. But now that we're here, how do we go forward, right? Trying to zoom in, so.
Yeah.
Alright, one last level setting thing and then we'll get into how the numbers work. There's an important concept, it's important to understand how the liability is calculated and what it means. The liability is made up of two main components. You have your explicit costs, so those are the employer share, the town's share of the premiums that are being paid. That's explicit, that's very concrete. What is not as concrete is something called the implicit cost or the implicit rate subsidy. And this situation arises when the cost sharing premium, the premium you're using to charge retirees, is lower than the true cost of benefits. So I have a few lines on this graph here. The blue line represents the cost of benefits. As people get older, the cost of healthcare is expected to grow, right? The yellow line is what the premium would be if you're calculating a premium purely for your active employees, right? Your active employees, any active employee at any given age is expected to have a lower cost of benefits than a retiree at the same age, right? People retire for various reasons, but sometimes one of those reasons is health reasons, right? The purple line is what the premium would be, and these are just hypothetical numbers, these are not specific to Simsbury. What the premium would be if you were calculating a premium for just retirees. Well, what the town is getting is this red line. You're getting this from your insurance broker. It's a premium that applies to everybody, active employees and retirees. So what this means is you're essentially subsidizing the retiree rate with actives. And the difference here, this gray shaded area, is that implicit cost. That is incorporated in that $25 million liability that I showed you earlier. And that implicit cost comes out in your actual claims. So right now, the town pays a percentage of this lower premium, but by paying that, you're ignoring those costs as part of your funding into the health insurance fund. So the mechanism we're gonna change is gonna kind of switch away from that to avoid that from happening.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last part?
Sure, so currently the town, and we'll get this on the next page, the town is paying a portion of this red premium. Okay, the retirees pay a portion, the town pays a portion. But by doing that, you're not paying, the premium that's being charged is not the full true is not covering the full true cost of the healthcare. Because that should be this purple line. Okay, so because essentially retirees are underpaying and actives, you're overpaying for active employees and you're underpaying for retired employees. In combination, it all equals out.
Yeah,
But
you said it's not being paid, but
Well, it's being paid when you count the active premiums that are being overpaid relative to their true cost of benefits.
that's what confused me.
Yes.
Sorry, which is inherent to the idea of having a pension that you pay into when you're younger, right? That's not like a flaw in our setup.
No, it's just
Just how
yeah, it's just how it is.
Okay.
I mean, you could have the retirees be rated separately and develop a separate premium, but then you get to very expensive premiums that are hard for retirees to put their share on.
as they are no
Right.
longer working. Yes, okay.
So the general practice is to come up with a single premium for both active employees and retired employees. Okay, now this is just for pre-65 retirees. Retirees that are after 65 and eligible for Medicare are on the Medicare Advantage plan. That plan is rated just for retirees, so that has no implicit cost. The implicit cost only comes for the pre-65 portion of the liability. Okay, next page. Alright, so getting into the kind of mechanics of it all now. This is currently how the town is budgeting for the OPEB every year. So your broker calculates a premium, and so these are actually real numbers for the town's portion of the numbers, not the Board of Ed. We couldn't get those aren't as easily to get in time for this meeting. So we're just using fiscal year 20, this is a fiscal year 25 actual results for the town. So your broker calculated a premium per member per month, and the retirees paid their share. The town pays their share. And that entire amount of $571 is then transferred from the general fund to the health insurance fund. Okay? These are the actual expenditures and claims for fiscal year 25. Some years it's gonna be higher, some years it's gonna be lower. This just happens to be what it was for fiscal year 25. It says claims here, but what claims represent are the premiums paid for the self-insured plans, the Medicare Advantage plans. Those are just premiums, there's no actual claims being paid. Plus the actual claims paid for the pre-65 plans, okay? So that was about $520,000. So that's what's actually happening. So in your health insurance fund, you had $571 go in, $520,000 come out. There's some additional entries that Amy makes, mostly on paper, just to get everything to balance. It's not actual cash flow. But the third entry is having these come out of the health insurance fund, go into the OPEB trust, but then come back out of the OPEB trust. So it nets out on the OPEB trust. On paper, we show contributions going into the trust of $520,000 and claims coming out, benefits coming out of $520,000. Net zero. It's just on paper for accounting purposes. This doesn't actually happen. Any questions on that before? This is what you're currently doing. Okay, next page. Oops. So what we propose that you do is, again, your broker calculates a premium, the retirees pay their share of that premium. That number hasn't changed, that $208,000. What your budget item is here is instead of paying the town's portion of the premium, you're gonna pay the actuarially determined contribution. This is the number that I calculate and provide to the town every year. Now you'll see that's higher than the 300. We'll get to that in just a second. So then that 208 is still transferred to the health insurance fund. But that $567,000 contribution is transferred not to the health insurance fund, but to the OPEB trust. Okay, to begin accruing interest and earning investment income. Again, your claims are what they are, still $520,000, those didn't change, those are the actual claims. First, we pay those claims with the retiree portion of the premiums. And then what's ever left to be paid is gonna come out of the OPEB trust and be reimbursed to your health insurance fund. Okay? In this particular year, the numbers show that the budget would be roughly $200,000 higher than it would have otherwise been, right?
And our other payments are down 100.
Yes. But that's just the way the math worked out in this particular year. If something happens and your premiums go up significantly, then this number, that $300,000 goes up as well. Whereas the $567 is gonna be much more predictable. It's not gonna be reacting to claims and premiums in a single year. It's more smoothed out over time.
Because of the smoothing.
Because of all the smoothing that we're doing and all the actuarial techniques.
And because we can now invest that money in a
Now we
more
can invest that money.
aggressive.
For a mature plan over time, going back to that funding formula, benefits are funded by contributions and investment income. On average, 60% of that is from investment income and 40% is from actual contributions, if you properly use your trust over time. You've been putting the money aside, so now it's time to start using that money. And so onto the next slide. So on this slide, I'm comparing the pay-as-you-go benefit payments. So those blue bars are the expected costs year over year over the next 20 years. So it equals about $49.2 million over the next 20 years. The gray line, the black line going through are the projected actuarially determined contributions over the next 20 years.
So for people watching at home, everybody should be going, wow.
So switching to this method can save you up to 20, maybe more $1 million over the next 20 years.
Could you say that again?
Switching to this method and using this budget method going forward could save the town up to over $20 million over the next 20 years.
So I wanna first thank both you and Amy for looking into this. I know you've been managing this and I think it's a testament to both your persistence and attention to detail, so thank you both.
I have one last slide, it's just to close it up here. And this is just to show what happens to the funded ratio of the plan if you use the trust or versus if you continue on with the current approach, that's the yellow line. You continue to just keep paying the benefits outside of the trust and the money continuing to accumulate. Your funded ratio is gonna just skyrocket. Well, that's great, but when employees see funded ratio skyrocket, they start asking questions, right? And people ask questions. 174% funded is not a goal. 100% funded is a goal. And you're there. So let's move to that.
So the net impact if we make this change and the budget is really only 100,000 more for 20 million saving over time.
Yeah, that's on the town's portion only.
And the town's
Board of Ed
portion, right.
would be different. It would be maybe a little bit more, but
Wait, what's the 100,000? What's
well, it's way 200,000 is the difference between the premium
And the ARC was
and
like
the-
200,000.
yeah, about 200,000.
So net 100, when you look at the bottom line of the budget, cause we had 100,000 saving on the pension ARCs and 200 more.
Oh, that's the 100 you're
the
talking
current
about,
current
okay.
budget. Yeah, the current budget.
How does that work? We had 100,000 saving on the two pension payments for the town, but this is gonna cost us 200, so the net is 100.
Okay, got it.
And in the short term, you might be paying more out of the budget because as those claims really as your retiree population continues to grow, because you're pre-funding the future.
Right.
And you've only had a trust for so many years. When you open the trust, not all those people have retired yet, so you're still pre-funding for future retirements. And the claims, as you see on that previous slide, the claims are at about a little over $1 million now. They're expected to grow to over $3 million per year in the future. So that's a lot of growth over the next 20 years. And so as those claims come to fruition, that's that implicit cost that's not being accounted for in your current budget.
And how long have we had this trust?
I was trying to find that and I couldn't, and you weren't here, and I was probably like in college still, so but I'd say about 15, maybe
That's what I was
15 years or
guessing,
so is my
yeah.
guess. I guess I wasn't in college, I wish I was, but
So it's so the implication is that it has gotten to a stage where we can now think of this as a mature trust
yes,
and that can be managed.
yes,
Based
exactly.
on, okay, got it,
Managed and treated just as you do your pension trusts.
got it, okay.
And reduce volatility and
those are the benefits of all.
generate income in a
Yes, let those contributions,
efficient way.
yeah, let them put them into the trust so that they can put the money to work for you. And like I said,
Okay, I understand this now.
most of only 5% of the state isn't even close to it, but 5% of the state is more than has a funded ratio over 90%.
So this is a great example of the town and the boards working together. Yes, there's a spend to save aspect of it, but if you play the long game, which the Board of Finance always does, a 20 million savings over the long term is really congratulations to both management and the boards for making the contributions over time. This is why we did that. If we switch to the implementation, Amy, yeah, I assume you'll work with the actuary and you'll figure it out for the budget. Is that all? Do you have anything to add to this after I've
She explained it very well.
Alright.
Better than I could have.
Yeah, so just congratulations to everyone who worked on that. So we do have some good news tonight, so that's always nice.
Thank you to those before us that had the presence of mind to put this together.
Yeah.
A lot of hard decisions had to be
Yeah,
made at the early
I
part
can
of this
only
to
imagine
get to
what
where
was
you are
going
today.
on 18 years ago when they were talking about this stuff.
But now you get to reap the benefits and continue to maintain the status quo.
That was a remarkably clear presentation.
It really was.
Thank you.
She always does. I mean, that's why we love her. One of the things Mark had requested, I think we are due for another experience study.
We did one in 2022,
Right.
probably a couple more years. It's every 5
5
years is a
years,
best
yeah.
practice.
Okay.
So I think we did it with experience through the end of 2021. So probably after the end of this current fiscal year that we're in, then we should maybe,
After June 30th.
yeah, once we have collected all that data,
Maybe does that work?
we could start.
Alright, so we'll plan
So
for
we'll
that.
get through the valuations next year and have collected all the data and then can start that work and it'll impact the results of the 28 valuation. So fiscal year 30 numbers, so we got some time before it hits anything, but I don't there was a lot of movement last time. But that was it was all good news, I believe, if I
It
recall.
was at the time.
But it was a lot of movement because it had been a while since an experience study has been done. If you employ the best practices and do it every 5 years or so, you don't see as much movement from one study to the next because it's just a check-in. It's like we all go to the doctors on a regular basis to get a check-in. If you don't go to doctors for a long time, suddenly go and they discover all these issues, right? So I don't anticipate discovering much in that one, but it's a good check-in to just make sure we're still where we should be as far as the assumptions are
So
concerned.
if you come back to us next December, that's when we would authorize that. When would you want us to authorize?
Authorize doing the study?
Yeah.
Probably next December.
Okay.
And so I'll be prepared to provide you with the cost to do that.
Excellent.
Does any questions from any members at this point on this? Really excellent job, thank you, and great news, much needed, very pleased.
It's not often I get to bring good news, so
Yeah.
I'll reap it while I can.
Thank you, have a good night.
Thank you very much, have a good night.
You too, thanks for sitting through the first
Oh,
presentation.
no problem.
Shall I just keep this?
Yeah, just if the OnlyFans thing kicks in, you better put on a show. That's how I'm paying my mortgage.
Amy, what's the status of the tax stuff?
You
We're all
started
set,
with Tinder.
you want me to get them?
Pardon?
They're all set if you want me to
Okay.
get them. Or if Tom to get them.
Feelings.
I have Bob DiCrescenzo, I'll text him as soon as they're ready. I think he'll be in at 5.
I don't think that we'll need him, but if you wanna text him and have him on Thursday night.
And Justin,
What's our other agenda item?
we have
We've got
The
the annual
draft.
statement,
the financial statement.
Okay, good.
We have the fiscal year budget discussion, which we never seem to get to. And
The garbage.
Regina, are you
Should we put it?
I'm not right now, I got my whole blanket, thanks.
It's been bubbling by this whole time.
Right, bring your own blanket.
Especially when you have Tom Roy here, cause he can control.
Gina, I always bring wraps.
I have 5%.
Why spend the money, Tom?
Good.
I always bring wraps. If you notice, watch my last few meetings.
Yeah, it is, I heard the.
Why spend the money? I've got this.
I'm constantly putting
Might be a
wraps
little low on pressure.
And it gives everyone warning when I have something to say.
Watch where selectmen meetings, you'll see me in wraps all the time.
You got nothing to make it worth it.
Mark, was in the room when they were here?
Somewhere.
Well, I didn't wanna, you know,
Like,
contradict you, but technically they can be on the side.
In my board of selectmen bag, I was like, oh, well now I have three.
They can't have any discussion, but they don't have to leave. You don't have to leave.
I've not even seen Bobby doing meeting before.
I think if you want to, you can, but I don't know anything in Robert's rules.
We had a lovely conversation. We have way more fun than you guys.
It's like this color.
We talked about this.
I mean, it is your brand. I mean, I might recommend you sit in the audience just not to confuse
And
the
also,
public.
they was like one meeting.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I don't wanna sit here for.
These chairs are more comfortable than they
I'm
look.
very disappointed with the lack of vibrancy on
Right.
the inside.
Mark,
You
oh,
and
we
your
lost
browns and blues.
We can't go ahead without him. Can we?
George, did I ask you? Came in like wearing the George outfit, black turtleneck and black pants. I was like, oh my gosh. The George uniform. Thank you.
They have as well.
Well, I think that they're well liked by
He's coming back.
Who, Mark?
Do we have Mark?
We're all just getting caught up.
What are you waiting for, by the way?
I know, he's.
I'm just here enjoying Michelle.
You're having a parent teacher conference show today.
Yeah, modeling, fun stuff like that.
Well, debt modeling,
Do you go to a
I
dentist
know you
office?
wanna see that, and
Yeah.
we will do it.
Should have read the agenda and showed up later.
Mike, I could have texted you. Mike, it's time. Show up.
I know, my kids are gonna be
Nice to see
starstruck
the
though.
sausage get made sometimes.
Yeah.
They're gonna be like,
Is it though?
Is it?
Exciting week, it's gonna be a long night.
You should at least attend the board of
Mike's had a
ed, you know,
sneak
budget meeting.
That's
I
like
don't
it's
get
not
to
a
do
sneak
like
peek.
Yes, those-
next to you.
I
I
sent
will
it
be,
to
it's
I don't need to finish books with you anymore. Cause like, I mean, it seems
They
unnecessary.
haven't scheduled that
It
yet,
would
have
look
they?
kinda funny.
We're like, I have to go
Let Tom
look.
go to get
The list is
Mark.
out, I think, of
Yeah.
the triangle where it is and all that.
I know, well, I'll be at the try word, but
Do
um.
I have a
Because I'm-
copy of the
I'm
motion?
back
Do you have a copy
at,
of the
liaison
motion?
for that, so.
The latest?
It should be in the packet.
The liaison.
The liaison?
The liaison.
No, I
just
have
put it
the,
back again.
I have the most recent.
Oh, you have
when
the
they
liaison?
tell you what they wanna do.
Okay.
I'm not the liaison to Simsbury, I'm the liaison.
What? He's warming up something for Bart.
Because when I got
Well, we didn't have to.
He's at the
liaison is
microwave.
misspelled. It says Diana Geisley.
Okay, we have Bob on. Bob, we're just waiting for Mark to enter the room. He was in the room and he left, and so
Okay.
we're just waiting on him. Bob, just to fill you in on where we were, during the discussions, it came to light that we are about $128,000 short on what is needed, which leaves us at about 3% contingency. We needed to correct the motions to make sure that they reflected both when we get the dollars deposited into the town. But also how we're gonna deal with the 3% contingency that's left and what options we have to handle that, given that it's a little bit less than what our professional engineering staff recommends that we have for a project of this size.
So what are they recommending?
That's why you're here, and we're gonna hear that right now, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. So we've got some new information. First of all, in no particular order, the actual dollar amount, Jeff, correct me on this, you wanna give that amount into the record?
32,881.
$932,881 is the cash on hand to be transferred to the town on or before January 9th.
January 9th.
January 9th is the agreement, Chair. And I think that answers the two big questions. It's the position of management that we not ask for additional funding over and above the 388 at all costs, and that's been at least my recommendation from the beginning. I was reluctant to come for this supplement, in fact. Don't wanna go into the weeds on why and what we did to avoid having to come for additional taxpayer monies on this project. Suffice it to say that, as you mentioned, and again, kudos to the team for the value engineering. But where we are now, Chair, is everything that has been value engineered out will remain out.
Right.
Everything, including the siding. And we are not asking for a nickel more than $388. And that will cover what I say is 100 shortfall. You just alluded to the 128. It's 128 if you give them the maximum credit to get them to, but as Jeff Dornberg indicated, it was actually closer to
932, 881.
932, 80, but how much did you pay for the preliminary
So that
plan?
means around 100,000.
Closer to 100, so I just wanna be clear that one of the board members indicated you've heard a number of different numbers, and I know that's confusing, I wanna clarify that, it's $100,000, and as far as I'm concerned, I have always used that number personally as your town manager. I know that they wanna say it's slightly higher. There was some confusion about that 128 because it matched the number that the engineers have put in for the oversight, and so there was a little bit of segue about that, and those are two different things. We believe, and I'll defer to Tom and Adam on this so you can be sure that there's agreement, that with everything value engineered out, this is the appropriate number to ask. The contingency is contingency, and by definition, one engineer may say, it's best practice to have 10%. Another one would say in a project like this where it's donations and it exudes so much impact on economic development to the town that it's not inadvisable to proceed with a slightly lesser margin and a slightly higher risk. And that's what we did then. We're not doing it now, we did it then, knowing that we could come back to you for a supplemental if we absolutely needed to. That's why we made that decision. So we're here asking for it today. We will not be back for a nickel more than $388, and that's my directive to staff as your town manager. That can be done with a slightly lower contingency, with 932 instead of 904. And I just wanna say also that it was asked on our Zoom call, well, can the PAC put up more money? And here's my personal position on this, not a decision maker, but just as your chief negotiator. It is very difficult to go to a nonprofit that has, by all accounts, raised $1 million over the last couple of years from their donors for a public-private partnership and ask them to put in, say, half of the 388, that was a number that was floated, right? When we don't know what it's for, it's for contingency. The appropriate time to have that conversation would be at the finality of the project, when the project is closed out. If there is a shortfall, I'm happy and would, as your town manager, have that conversation, but I don't believe it's necessary to have it now.
There will be no shortfall, cause
There
you cannot expend more than what we've
Well,
appropriated.
You have an appropriation higher than the amount of cash, so we can spend it if the PAC ponies it up. And that's why we
You
do
have
it.
appropriations from specific funding sources. We have an email from Glenn that says if we wanna change the funding source, we just need to.
Yeah, I agree with you, but no additional town's funds would be sought, is what I'm saying. If the PAC wanted to voluntarily put up additional money, then obviously you need approvals for that. I'm not saying you don't, I'm simply saying that that's not off the table down the road, and I can't imagine why it would be necessary. But I just wanna say from my perspective, Chair, and I appreciate the time, the question of whether they get credit for that preliminary money, were it not for the preliminary 100,000, we would not have received the 900,000 DECD grant.
We're not questioning whether it's the right decision or
Well,
wrong.
you asked who made the decision.
Yes.
You asked it, and the
Yes.
implication was that whoever made the decision shouldn't have made that.
Well,
Oh,
the
no, 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 no,
implication I
no.
think was that the person who was doing 100 or 128, or Tom's slides which showed that administrative costs were 145, may not have been tied in with the rest of the budget activity given the amount of conflicts that we've seen. I don't think the judgment of whether or not we needed designs in hand in order to get shovel ready. I have not heard question about that, but it does seem that that decision was not tied in with at least 3 subsequent requests for funds. The other thing, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna put Tom in a tough spot here because Tom is an employee here, but I'm asking an engineering sort of question here because reserves are not to protect against how important a project is to a town. I believe the project is important. but it's to protect against the risk that we're gonna keep doing this and we're not gonna have enough money. Is 3% enough for us to go and finish this project? Understanding that we're value engineering it, what kind of risk are we having on the project?
What we're looking at doing is dropping out anything that's not necessary. So it's dropping out the siding unless we get to a point in the project that we feel we have enough contingency to put that back in. We're dropping out the communications and the cameras, we're dropping all that out. That gets us.
Could you put up that slide again with the?
I don't have that as a slide with the.
Oh.
This was the granular details that we had included. The only thing we had up on the slide was that we had security cameras that were not included, that would be included as part of a town project. And if we have to have town staff put the cameras back up that they took down, that's what we'll do. It's somewhat of a missed opportunity in terms of, you're redoing a building, should you update and modernize it? The reality is, this project was to get a green room and an office space, and that's the bar we're gonna hit.
So with the value engineering, and I'm sorry to have interrupted, but with all that, is the contingency still 3% or is it now?
It pushes it back closer to the 6%.
Okay.
So with the work that we are committed to having to do, and with the money that would be total in the budget with a 388 approved, that gives you, sitting here right now, a reasonable expectation that there's 6% MR.
That's correct.
And as you get further along in the project, I believe siding is one of the last things that goes on a building.
That's correct.
And so if there was sufficient funding left that the siding could match, you were empowered then to go and make that decision because we've authorized you for the 388.
That's correct.
Okay.
And again, even if we chose not to do the siding, it would be different siding, but we're not gonna have a part of the building that would be unkempt looking, it would just, it's opportunities.
Thank you.
So we have
Is there a way to put in the process that, like, so it seems like your new spend, if my math is right, is about $3 million. There's a 6% contingency, I think, lines up with like 3.2 is what you're gonna have available.
Yeah, the 6%.
And so I think, go ahead.
No, I think the 6% was about $195,000.
Yeah, that's the 200, right? So I think you got 3.2 and you're gonna have 3 spent essentially. Is there a way that we could make it a public thing somehow that anything that goes over the 3 has to come back to this group? Because like it makes it the town's problem if you go over the 3. If all of a sudden you're at 315 and now we gotta go back at this again, we know we're not gonna leave the building undone, right? So like it is the town's sort of issue and it's gonna become our issue again, and we've already blown through the first, sort of slug of this. How do we have a different contingency and level of oversight on the next piece of this? So that if we're gonna have to stand next to this whole group and like fund it again, we saw every decision. We saw how you minimized to get like the least amount of stuff you could do to get to a very simple CO just to get the thing going versus like other decisions were made that we didn't know and now we're having to like make another decision for our taxpayers. So like it's still not lost on me that $400,000, guys, is roughly, if my math is right, it's about a 0.4% increase in our mill rate. And like, if you told me at the last minute of our budgeting process, I could pull out 0.4% of a mill rate, we would feel like superstars, right? Because we would take 3.2 to 2.8 or something like that. Like you would take a really big like chunk out of a percentage increase. So this is a big deal to me still. So like, what could we do so that the taxpayers know that like we're taking this next slug? Each slug should get harder and harder. And there should be more like friction to it. So how can we do something to have more oversight?
Trust me, Art, if it helps that I'm feeling pain, I'm feeling a lot of pain on this project because I'm here tonight, I'm talking with the board.
Too, like my rule
That's
is always
okay.
when I'm standing in line at Fitzgerald and someone asks me why I voted yes or no, I need to answer the question, right? So like we're all gonna feel the pain.
No, and I'm okay with it. I've been happy to do this, but there's oversight by this board, there's oversight by the Board of Selectmen, there's oversight by the town manager. Eyes are on this from the Performing Arts Center, and every single change order on this project is also running through the Public Building Committee. You can have no more oversight on this project than what we currently have. It is every single dime is being scrutinized.
I get it. I don't want to imply that anyone's doing something irresponsible. It's more like I feel like our oversight is like on the back end. It's like decisions are made and things, and it's like how could we see? Because like you're gonna be making dynamic decisions, Tom, right now, like, cause you're gonna be making CO type decisions all of a sudden to be like, oh no, this is $100,000 more than I thought. Am I gonna dig into the contingency or not? It seems like that should be a very public thing, right, as that is happening. For this layer, like we're asking for the town to put up 50% more than it was putting up before.
Yeah, no, I can understand what you're saying. I also would respectfully say some of the decisions aren't as dynamic as you would think. Most of them are smaller. But again, every single change order goes through the process of being reviewed at the Public Building Committee. Every single invoice is reviewed at the Public Building Committee. There is a lot of chances for the public to see how the sausage is being made in something like this. And not that I'm not looking to be as transparent as possible, but we spend a lot of our time already working on these administrative things, and I don't know what we could do to add any further transparency or checks and balances. I mean, the Public Building Committee is independent.
Can I add a suggestion that Art, I don't know if this would make you comfortable. If you could just, if you dip into contingency, please let us know at our next regular meeting so that we can just track the level of contingency on the spending. We get updates from Amy every month on the
It's just whenever
budget.
we have a change order, I'll forward it to you.
Would that work, Art?
Yeah, look, it's a step in the right direction. I don't know what the art of the possible is here, to be honest with you. So I mean, that's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, we give a monthly report at the Public Building Committee.
Maybe we could get a copy of that then.
It's all publicly available on town website.
That would be, if we can have it as a communication in our packets, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I think that it's a different group than this group is, right? Because we're the buck is stopping on this particular part of it. So like, I wouldn't be opposed to, I mean, this thing's supposed to be done in 6 months. Why don't we get 3 updates live over the next 6 months to understand how things are going? I don't see the downside. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's additional work, but like, let's just make it like really clear to the Board of Finance exactly where we stand.
Well, we have our next meeting is the quarterly report in January. We should be getting that. And so we could I mean, we just had Tom here this month, then in February, the budget presentations begin. That would be part of the budget presentations. And then when you come to us in March, we are gonna expect an update in March when the presentation is to our board. Would that make sense to just have a substantive presentation in March when the Board of Selectmen presents their budget to us?
I asked them, what do you need my help with? They're just arguing with each other. What, Pete?
Bob?
Himself.
He muted himself.
I don't understand what you're saying.
He was talking to somebody else.
Doesn't sound like Bob.
So would you be satisfied if Tom gave us a presentation when the Board of Selectmen does their presentation to us on the status of the project at that point, and then we get the monthly copies of the monthly building reports? And note
I think it makes sense, and I think we should just make it an agenda item as well, Lisa. Like, I think it should be more than just like, we get it. Like, I think we should talk about it live.
Okay.
That's my personal view. I guess my other point, again, I'm sounding like I'm being a pain in the butt, but like, and I don't know the right legal terms, but I feel like we have these as whatever appropriations or whatever. Should the last, if there's going to be a 6% buffer, should we split it 3 and 3 so the last 3 is only spent as an appropriation that actively has to be made as a decision by the Board of Finance?
I don't think we can do a Bob, is it possible for the Board of Finance to do a contingency like that? It's my understanding that's a decision of the Board of Selectmen, but can you clarify that point?
And just to be clear, I'm just looking like, the more you go and ask someone for money, there should be more strings attached. And so like, I just feel like we should be attaching strings to this. And not to belabor it more than it needs to, I just think it drives the right behavior. And to me, it drives basically like a 0 probability that we're gonna have to go back to the taxpayers again.
I would say, respectfully, I think we're duplicating the efforts that we're already entrusting the Public Building Committee to do. experts, they're both legal
But
experts.
how did we, but with all due respect, Tom, how did we get here? I hear what you're saying, but like, we gave the money away with like carte blanche before, and we blew through all of it. So like, I hear you, and again, I'm not saying someone did anything irresponsible. I'm saying, what additional bells and whistles should we put on this layer? If I went to get a home equity line on my, on my mortgage, on top of my mortgage, they would charge me a higher interest rate, right? Like, the further out you go in sort of extending yourself financially, there should be some level of a ramification. And I just think this is about transparency and having to have some say so.
Yeah, I guess.
Again, like I'm listening to within like a 2-hour period we heard from, and I don't think we heard much of this in the first go around of the funding for this. This time I heard a few places, even offline, people saying, geez, like, well, what's going on here? And so I'm trying to get to yes, but I want to be able to answer people's questions that like, I feel like we did this a little bit differently for this layer.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I missed the question that was posed to me.
Yes, Bob.
Notice me where I am.
2 questions. The first question we had from Art, and Art, let me know if I say it wrong, is he wanted to know when we do pass the referendum, can we make part of the appropriation contingent upon coming back to the Board of Finance for approval? I wasn't sure if that is permitted since it is the Board of Selectmen who generally approves changes to the project. So, but I wasn't sure what appropriation law permitted. Can you answer that?
But Lisa, don't we make appropriations at times? Don't we, at the end of our meetings, have to make additional appropriations?
I think you could put language into the referendum question that would say, subject to final approval by the Board of Finance and or the Board of Selectmen. I wanna run that by bond counsel though, because again, I always defer to him on issues of borrowing, or this is not borrowing, but I consulted with him this morning and we reached a consensus opinion, and I'd like to do that again. But I can't see why you couldn't put in there, subject to final approval by the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. Or
What would we
you could
be
just put
making subject
a
to?
not to exceed number in the question.
That would be the 388, not to exceed.
I'm not sure.
Because think about it this way, right? We're asking for 388. 200 of it's already spent because the 6% contingency is only like 180 or 190, right? So like, I'm basically saying for like the part that's contingency, which is half of what we're asking for. So half of it is completely carte blanche.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other half, I'm saying split that in half and make it so that the last quarter of what we're asking for, like you gotta come back to the Board of Finance at that point. You can't just go and spend it because we needed to know.
I don't know that necessarily needs to be in the referendum question. That can just be a direction that to town staff that before this final appropriation is released, you're gonna get our approval.
So it's not.
The referendum is the appropriation. Right? And below that top line appropriation, you could put an administrative process in place that you gotta come back and get final approval unless something's totally out of whack that we don't anticipate, you're gonna approve it, right? As long as it's within the top line number. Because everybody wants the project to be completed.
I'm not sure what that language would even look like.
I would leave the resolution the way it is and then give direction to the town manager that you got the 200 you've already committed to contractually and you got the 188 in contingency, but before you dip into the contingency, the Board of Finance wants to review it for consistency with, the discussion you had tonight.
Okay, so the motion would be, we would do a motion before we do the capital.
Motion to approve the resolution as presented by bond counsel this afternoon. And then a second motion that if that resolution passes that referendum prior to the expenditure of anything out of the 188, the staff through the town manager has to seek final approval from the Board of Finance, so you have a second look at how the money's being spent.
Okay.
So you don't change the resolution, leave that just the way it is, that gives you a top line appropriation. But below that, it seems to me you could put together a administrative process where even though the appropriation's been made, the Board of Finance has a second look at how that final 180 is being spent. Understanding that if it's being spent the way you're being told it's gonna be spent, you're hard pressed not to approve it.
Absolutely. One thing I just wanna let the public know, it requires 4 votes of this board to pass this. Art, do you need this? Art?
Well, I'm thinking, yeah, I think I do.
Okay. So Amy, after we get through this, we'll just do another motion, cause I tried to write it and I could not capture everything. We'll get that included in the motion. Alright, the second thing we have, Amy redid the motions. Do you have that? Can you just read those through to Bob and make sure that the rest are in place?
Yeah, I have a copy too, so you can see.
Thank you.
And we'll read it out loud because Art is not available. So the motion would be, and this will keep the bond resolution as you presented it with Glenn, our bond counsel, but we would also do in addition to that, move effective December 10th, 2025 to approve a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $388 for the Simsbury Performing Arts Center band expansion next act project to be funded via the Capital Reserve Fund, and further move that all project savings associated with this project be returned to the town to replenish the Capital Reserve Fund. We have Jeff and his board's agreement that the money, any savings comes back to the town. And further move that the amount of $932,881 in the Simsbury Performing Arts Center donations be deposited with the town by January 9, 2026. And further move, and we'll get Amy to write what you just said about the contingency part.
Shouldn't be the third paragraph be that the approval is contingent on the receipt of that 932 by January 9th, 2026?
We can make that change, right, make it contingent upon. Further move that the supplemental
Because it's part of that's actually reflected in the resolution. So the idea is you're not gonna spend town money until you're absolutely 100% sure that the private money is in hand.
Okay, great.
Which it will be, so it's, but it protects against some unforeseen circumstance where that money never comes through.
Okay, so once we have those 3 things, have we answered the questions of board members? I'm not asking for your vote now, but I just would like a leaning. Do we think we're ready to take a vote, or is there more information people need?
I'm ready.
This went to the voters, it will go back to the voters. I think there's a lot of lessons learned about things we can do better. I've talked with Mark about that. He came in mid-cycle. I think we've got tremendously professional staff. I really wanna commend Tom and your team for everything that you did on that. Adam was here tonight, and of course Amy and the finance department. This has been extremely complicated. I think we're at a point where we now understand the dollars amount. We've done some value engineering to get it down. If the contingency isn't needed, those can be perhaps added back, or there may be subsequent donations raised at a later time or subsequent appropriations to make any other improvements, and those will of course go against the other priorities of the town. Bob, is there anything else you think we need to know at this point, or are we good to go?
No, I think you've got it covered, and I think you've covered every angle, and I think you're good to go.
Okay.
And like I said, bond counsel and I discussed this earlier today, and we were in full agreement in how you proceed.
Okay, great. So we will then take a 5-minute break and let Amy, do you need 5 minutes to write the second part? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break for Amy to fix that motion, and then Amy, while you're doing that, can we get a copy of the bond or the capital resolution from Glenn? Do we have
Tom handed it out.
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Before we break, I just wanna say, everybody here already past night. Everybody here has been dealt a difficult hand, obviously, and I imagine that these changes you've just come and announced, I can see by your faces, are a bitter pill to swallow. So I appreciate that you've accepted this for the benefit of the project and the town.
Yeah, and I think I have the bond resolution, it says the state grant, $1,032,888 in donations, but that assumes that the design thing is being credited as an in-kind contribution. I just wanna make sure everybody's on the same page with that, okay. Alright, so we will then break for 5 minutes. Once Amy has the final motion, we will be ready for motions, and then we'll get to what our good friend has been waiting for, which is really exciting, debt modeling. Alright, we are adjourned by consensus for 5 minutes, not adjourned. We are the motions, and then we're gonna do the resolution second. So, may I have a motion effective December 10th, 2025 to approve a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $388 for the Simsbury Performing $388,000 for the Simsbury Performing Arts Center bandshell expansion next act project to be funded via the Capital Reserve Fund and be moved to referendum.
We're making separate motions.
Oh, I'll do them all, that's a good idea. And further move that all projects savings associated with this project be returned to the town to replenish the Capital Reserve Fund. And further move that this appropriation be contingent on the amount of $932,881 in Simsbury Performing Arts Center donations being deposited with the town by January 9th, 2026. And further move that the town has the authority to spend $200,000 of the supplemental appropriation that was returned to the Board of Finance to spend the remaining $188,000. Is there someone who's willing to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Congratulations, Regina. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, we have unanimous. If this required 4 votes, we have 4 votes. We will now move on to the resolution. This will be read in its entirety by our newest member of the board, Regina.
Resolution appropriating an additional $388,000 in capital reserve funds for an aggregate appropriation in the amount of $3,170,881 for the previously approved improvements to the Performing Arts Center bandshell addition. Resolved that the previously approved resolution entitled Resolution appropriating $900,000 in state grant funds, $1,320,881 in donations.
So
And
that's $1,032,881.
Yes. And $500,000 in capital reserve funds in addition to $350,000 in capital reserve funds previously appropriated for an aggregate amount of $2,782,881 for improvements to Performing Arts Center, bandshell addition, is hereby amended to read. Resolution appropriating $900,000 in state grant funds, $1,332,881 in donations and $888,000 in capital reserve funds, in addition to $350,000 in capital reserve funds previously appropriated for an aggregate amount of $3,170,881 for improvements to Performing Arts Center, bandshell addition. Resolved that the town of Simsbury appropriate $900,000 in state grant funds, $1,032,881 in donations received, and $888,000 in capital reserve funds, in addition to $350,000 in capital reserve funds previously appropriated, for an aggregate $3,170,881 for improvements to the Performing Arts Center. Anticipated to include a bandshell addition off the rear of the existing structure, replacement of the existing roof to match new roof, replacement of existing siding to match new addition, permanent restrooms, storage space, green rooms, and rehearsal and community meeting space, heating, utilities, walkways, stairs, and ramps. The appropriation may be spent for planning, engineering, design and consulting fees, equipment, materials, construction costs, utilities and permit fees, and other expenses related to the project. The Board of Selectmen may determine the particulars and may reduce or modify the scope of the project, and the entire appropriation may be spent on the reduced or modified project. Further resolved that pursuant to section 406 of the town charter, this resolution be presented to a referendum vote under the following caption. Shall the town of Simsbury appropriate an additional $388,000 in capital reserve funds for an aggregate appropriation in the amount of $3,170,881 for the previously approved improvements to Performing Arts Center, bandshell edition.
I'd ask for a friendly amendment to that, just in the first sentence, in capital reserve funds, not in capital reserve refunds. Is that correct?
Yes, that should be funds and not refunds. But also there's a reference here to replacement of existing siding to match the new addition, and I think we've heard that we're striking that from the project.
But it may come back if there are savings, so it's
That's
within the authority to do it, but our understanding is that will not happen at this point.
My only recommendation would be putting in those constraints, just I would say less specifics would be better, but that's just coming from me.
I think
Right.
at this point,
But you'd want authority to do it if it turns out that the money's there, so Lisa's right. I withdraw my objection.
okay. All right, so with that, do you accept that friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay, so with that amendment, is there a second to the resolution that Regina made?
Second,
Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, we have unanimous consent. This will go to referendum. Mark, what is the date that we anticipate the referendum?
I believe it's January 24th, Chair. We'll let you know if there's any change on that.
Okay, do we need a supplemental appropriation to pay for the referendum?
We looked at the cost, I think, Tom, we're under 10,000, is that true?
Yeah, it'll be about 9,000 between the budget mailer that you guys wanted for it and then the cost of the referendum.
So we have our next meeting on the 16th. If you just prepare a supplemental appropriation
Will do.
for us to approve at that meeting, that would be great. And so you might need to call a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen to recommend it.
We have one on the 15th for the 4 years and the 16th.
Well, we're gonna have savings in the general fund, so we could probably just do a transfer in January with the
Do
transfers.
it in January as a transfer? Okay. So we'll see that, well, we have to do it in advance. Oh, well, we can do the motion next week with the funding source to be done date in January, cause they need. Or do you wanna do the fund? How do you wanna time this?
Well,
Just do it in January?
yeah. Yeah, because they're not gonna spend up to, 10,000 in their budget. So they'll have that and then the
Okay.
transfer will basically replenish that so that they
So
can
we'll do
spend
that
up
in
to
the
their.
January meeting? Okay. Does that work for you, Mark?
It does, Chair, thank you.
Okay, so that is done. Congratulations to the PAC. Thank you for everyone who has worked on this and to our engineering staff. We are excited that you are on the case and we wanna thank you for all your work. We understand that this is not just an engineering thing, this is multi-departments, multi-stakeholders, multi-board approval, so I wanna thank everyone who worked on this. Thank you all. Okay, and we will now move on to the really exciting part, which is debt modeling.
I stay on yes, there. I understand that puts us in a tough place with that.
Absolutely.
I really
I feel like we need to stay here just to
Yeah.
support Mike.
Go home,
So
man.
we're-
Your kids are asleep
There
now,
is-
it's time to
Right.
get there.
Should I stay, Mike? I do, that's what I kind of feel like, I should stay, just got through it.
Thanks, guys.
You okay?
Got through all
Hey,
this.
Lisa, do you need me for the last part or
We just need you to approve, if we can just approve the draft Board of Finance annual report statement, that would be great.
Not bad, but not that bad. Good luck. Thank you for your patience.
Okay,
I'm all for that.
alright. We'll move on quickly to the draft Board of Finance annual report statement. May I have a motion to approve the draft annual report statement subject to any edits by Amy for accuracy on numbers or representations to the public.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously.
Aye.
Okay. So Art and Regina do need to get off the call, so I wanna thank them for being here. We will fill them in.
It's been fun. I'll watch the recording.
The debt modeling. I do wanna get a
Thank
sense from Amy whether this makes sense to continue tonight. How is everyone feeling? Would it be better to do it on Tuesday after the I mean,
Or Mike.
No, Mike's not weighing in on this. You wanna bump
you wanna just go through it real quick,
If
the
y'all
debt
wanna go home
modeling
and
right
go to
now?
sleep, go home and go to sleep.
So what if I just go through like one of the models to show like the gist of it and the mechanics of it, and then you all can look at it at home, and if we wanna do it again on the 16th for clarification.
Could you start
or
with
anything.
number 3?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, no way.
I'm gonna switch since everybody's off Zoom.
Just as background while Amy's setting this up for members of the public, one of the things we are starting to do is plan for a major capital education construction project that has been presented to the Board of Ed, possibly Squadron. When could we do that and how could we afford it without a dramatic mill rate shock while taking care of the other capital needs of the town and the other operating needs? Because once you borrow for a big project, you create something called debt service, which is like a mortgage payment. If your mortgage payment goes up, other things need to come down or your taxes go up. So we'll be looking at different scenarios of ways we could do that. Amy has put together 4 models, one of which we'll review tonight, where we can change some of the assumptions.
So are we looking at scenario 3?
Model 3.
Yes.
Alright, so for these models, just to give some background on where some of the numbers are coming from, we went for a tax increase target of 2%. So you'll see in some years we tried to get close, and then other years there's a spike where I couldn't get as close. The operating budget assumption is 3% a year, with the exception of fiscal year 27, which is at 3.5% right now, just based on how fixed costs are coming in, and those will be finalized for the tri-board in a couple weeks. And then the last thing that they all assume, all these scenarios assume, is that we try to incorporate an increase to CNR at some point to either increase our cash for capital for a project in the out year, another major project, and try to save up, or we use it for our smaller capital needs where we have the 416 and the 550 and try to increase that funding. So just try to give us a little bit more cash flexibility. So for the newer members and those watching at home, just to walk through the base of the model, so we have our fiscal year adopted budget, fiscal year 26 adopted budget, and we have the town operating budget just shy of 30 million, and then we have our school operating budget of the 88 million. We have debt service of 9.5 million. So our total town expenditures that were approved at referendum is 128 million. So we do get some revenue from various sources, state revenues, we have charges for services, we have permit fees, things of that nature. So we take this gross budget number of 128 million, and then we offset any anticipated revenue that we're gonna get from the state, charges for services, things of that nature. And then also in fiscal year 26, I can provide some more insight to the newer members on this later on, but we did approve a transfer from the capital reserve into the operating budget to offset debt service for fiscal year 26. So we take that as a revenue credit to the general fund. So our total revenue and use of fund balance, or in this case capital reserves, is 16,264,000. This brings us down to our net expenditures, so we take the 128 in our gross expenditures, we subtract out any revenues that we're anticipated to receive. This gets us to our net expenditures of 111 million. And then this is how much that we are need to collect from our mill rate. If we go down here, we have a calculation based on our grand list growth on how much in property taxes we need to collect to fund this 111 million. So these two need to match at the end of the day. So for property taxes, we need to collect 102 million, car taxes, we need to collect 8.8 million. And then down here is just the grand list value. You can actually ignore that, it just adds confusion. And we have a tax collection rate of 98.5%. We typically collect around 99.5%, but we leave ourselves some cushion, typically used to put into our capital reserve at the end of the year. So we know we're gonna get more than this 98.5%, but it's the assumption that we use to set our mill rate. So then the mill rate is calculated on all of these assumptions above. It's calculated on the 98.5%, what we need from our grand list, and then this is how we come up with our mill rate of what taxpayers need to pay on their property in order to fund our expenditures. And then down here, we have a sample home impact of about $450,000 house. This is about how much a $450,000 house would pay. This is the increase in taxes from the prior year, and then this is their percent increase in taxes associated with that 239.
And Amy, just for the public, that does not include the fire district, it's just
That
on
does
the
not
town
include
side.
the fire district, correct. So then on and then so fiscal year 27, it's the same formula all the way down. But this is where we added in some of our assumptions. So for fiscal year 27, if you look up here, it has the fiscal year 26 budget. I just multiplied it by 3.5%. The same thing for the school budget. And then the debt service is based on what we are going to, what we plan on financing. So for fiscal year 27, I think we do have an issuance in there. Yes. So we have our capital improvement plan of projects that have been approved at the last budget cycle. So for fiscal year 26, a capital improvement plan was generated that had this amount of bonding each for each year within the plan. It's just a notation that I have down here based on the plan, but up here in the highlighted cells is what we're planning to increase our debt by. So this is based on Board of Finance guidance. Fiscal year 26, fiscal year 27 are a little funky, we can get into that at another time. It has to do with year end, which I believe you all were at. But then in the out years, we have $5 million a year, or as long as they don't exceed $10 million every 2 years, that's fine. It can be $7 million and $3 million, it can be $8 million and $2 million. The point being is just that every 2 years we go out to bond, and we don't want to bond any more than that $10 million to keep us on track with our plan. So if we put all of these numbers for our bonding into the schedule, have I lost anybody yet? That'd be great. So if we put
Hang on to every word, Amy.
oh, okay, great.
We're cheering you on.
So if we take all of our projects that we anticipate bonding and issuing debt for, and we put it into basically a whole bunch of different amortization schedules based on when we're gonna issue that debt. So for fiscal year 27 issuance, we're gonna issue 3.9 million, and it's gonna impact, oh, this is small. It's gonna impact our 2028 budget, and then it calculates our payment of about how much that's going to be, and it gives us our amortization schedule of how much we're gonna pay in principal, how much we're gonna pay in interest. So everything over here to this side is our existing debt. This is stuff that we've already bonded for, we're making payments on it, we have an invoice from US Bank, you have to pay this amount. So for fiscal year 27, we have to pay $9,064,000. Moving down to fiscal year 28, we have to pay $7.5 million. But in fiscal year 28, you'll see on the fiscal year 27 issuance that is gonna be a budget impact in fiscal year 28, And we're gonna add $398,000 for this issuance in principal and $139,000 in interest. So then our total for that issuance is gonna be $538,000. So if you take your 7.5 plus your $538,000, you get about $2 and $8 million debt issuance or debt cost. It goes all the way down with each issuance. Hold on, I just wanted to go to. So you have your 29 issuance, your 31 issuance, your 33 issuance, your 35 issuance. And then in the middle here, under this scenario, we add a large project in 35 budget impact, and then we break it out into 2035 and 2036. We will issue for the larger project. We don't issue.
Sorry, how long are these terms for? How long is each loan?
So we do 10 years for anything that's not a major project, and then the Board of Finance has approved 20 years for major projects.
Okay. So if we issue every 2 years, how do we maintain the same level of debt service on a steady state?
So it kind of depends. So we have issuances back all the way to 2015. So that debt falls off, new debt comes on. Sometimes it's better where the debt falling off is larger than the debt coming on, and then there's other times where the debt coming on is larger than the debt falling off, and there is that spike in debt service. Which is why under, if we go back here, that 1.3 million is one of the years that we were seeing a spike in debt service, where it increased. So our debt service was 8 million in fiscal year 25, and then it spiked to 9.5 million in fiscal year 26.
And we knew that was coming, so we had put money aside. So when you do a major capital project, you get a spike in debt service that naturally comes down. And how do you plan for that spike? And we had put money aside for that temporary spike. So that's something we planned for.
And so where do we get the aside money from?
The capital reserve fund.
Okay, thank you.
Dig deep in our couch cushions.
The capital reserve fund, just for the public, is generally funded with year-end surplus, which we get from operating savings, or if we get extra revenues that were unreliable and could not have been budgeted.
Okay.
Like we got a 700,000 state grant that came in.
Thank you.
So then we take all of our issuances at the end of this graph, or at the end of this chart, you have for fiscal year 27, our total debt is gonna be 9 million. For fiscal year 28, we anticipate it to be 8 million. For fiscal year 29, we anticipate it to be 7 million. And you can see as the issuances come on and the debt increases, and then as it falls off, it'll decrease. And then if you take this by year, this is where your debt service numbers track back to, is this line right here. So your financing schedule 19064,275 goes back to 9064275.
What we try and do is keep that number steady. And there are two numbers there. You see debt service and cash for capital. If we had instead of the 1.5 million spike and had a 1.5 million deficit, we'd still want to try and keep that steady, like smoothing, and we might add a cash for capital of 1.5 million to keep that number steady, because that number's gonna pop back up to debt service.
Okay.
That's sort of how we do smoothing on. It's like what we just talked about with OPEB.
With the other one, yeah.
So for this example, we're planning on bonding the 5 million every year, or the 10 million every 2 years. So those are our assumptions in the out years, which gets us to our debt schedule over the next several years, including the Squadron Line project, all the way down to fiscal year 2055. So we can plan out several years with our debt modeling on the amortization schedules and then going back to our levy calc of just using an escalator for our operating budgets, an anticipated debt service number. And then does that make sense on how we get to the debt service number? Okay. And then we go to the anticipated revenue. In here, so we have right now our motor vehicle tax is capped at 32.46 mils. We charge 32.46 mils for our car taxes. Our mill rate is higher than that at 33.02, so that difference is funded by the state.
Okay.
So we do that calculation where we anticipate state funding coming back for the difference in the mill rate. So I increased our anticipated revenues based on that increase in difference between the mill rate and what the 32.46 mils is. Anything above and beyond that, I kept flat. So our charges for services, our state revenue, which is also why I kept our operating budgets at 3%. We're hoping that the rate of inflation starts to come down, and we're hoping that we're being really conservative in the revenues because we know the state's gonna give us more money eventually at some point in time. So the revenue assumptions are strictly just an increase in our motor vehicle reimbursement.
And you're feeling confident about the state giving us the delta on the motor vehicle taxes?
For now.
For now? For now?
For now.
We're reasonably confident for now.
Yes, I mean, they haven't said any differently, but I wouldn't be surprised if long-term the state tries to make us,
At some point.
eat it. But right now they have committed to funding it. So based on the information we have.
Amy, what was your model assumption on the grand list growth?
Yeah, interesting question.
So the grand list growth, and again, that is what I hid, but just for yous playing along. The net grand list over here for the 3.1 comes from the grand list projections. And so Francine, our assessor, she'll project out for 5 years. For fiscal year 27, our increase is based on for real estate 0.78%, personal property 0.19%, and then motor vehicle 1.16%.
So what is the personal property? What does that entail?
So for like companies, any furniture and fixtures, businesses, things of that nature, so they get taxed for their personal property. Real estate, obviously, houses, buildings, things of that nature, and then we have the motor vehicles. So Francine will predict out for the next 5-6 years or so what she anticipates our grand list to grow by based on what's coming in for capital projects and from the planning department. And then outside of that, because she only gives us the projections through 5-6 years, I took an average of what the increase has been over, I forget the year period now, it's been in here a while, but I can look it up.
Sure.
Over the last several years and what our actual grand list growth has been, and I plugged that in for the out years.
Okay. That's good. That's a good assumption.
A couple of decision points for our board is we need to sort of get a feel from everyone, what is a reasonable tax increase? And do we want to have 0 tax increases some year and a 4 in some years, or do we want a steadier approach? That's one policy decision we have to make. What is the right number? Amy has, 3 and 3.5%. Rate of inflation is 2.75. So we could change that assumption as well, because it's not just what you need, it's sometimes about the resources you have.
Yeah.
But the other thing we could do, and Amy, this is the thing I think we're gonna need a decision point from our board. Can you go back to the funding page of the, cause what would happen if we didn't bond in 2027 and just use cash for capital and got rid of that?
Okay.
Take that to 0.
Fiscal year 27 would impact fiscal year 28. So this number, so if I took out the 3 million
If you go to the capital financing, you can just take that out and it links it back up to the levy page, right?
Right. So everything is linked, so if I take it out here, it comes out of the capital financing.
Great.
So now it's 7.5, so it saves about $500,000.
So what you would do there, if it saves 500,000, you see we've got cash for capital. We would then build that into cash for capital to keep that steady at 8 million. And if we did that all the way across the board, you'll see 729, 739, that's 500, 700, 300, 600 cash for capital that we start building there. And then when we get to the major capital project, those zero out and you've got some mill rate stabilization.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, that's a decision point we should at least think about doing. And consider, because that would enable us to plan for when does the major borrowing hit for the next project, Amy?
2035,
2035.
And how much would that be?
So the estimates that we got from Tecton are about the town's portion would be around $60 million.
Okay.
There's some caveats in there. We could get additional reimbursement for special programs like preschool but I just did the conservative 60 million as if we're just going to get, because I don't know if the state's gonna change their reimbursement levels either.
Yeah.
But you can see there's a big leap there from 7.5 to 10.3, and that's where the huge mill rate spike comes in. But one of the things we could do, could you go down to the tax levy just for a second? The tax levy you'll see are sort of over 2 in most of the things, if people's comfort level wanted to get that down. If we change the operating budgets instead of 3 to 2.75, the rate of inflation, you now have more money to spend on debt service and lower the mill rate. Cause it's all part of a zero-sum game. Mill rate goes up, something else has to come down.
Correct. Okay.
So that's sort of another option we could do, and that would require discipline and the coordination and cooperation of all the boards saying, hey, we wanna prioritize capital. That means we're gonna have to be tight on our operating. Or if we say, no, operating is more important, then we have a lesser project that we can approve over the long term. But what we can do is start building in that cash for capital. And if we filled in all that cash for capital in there, and each year increased, we're steady at 8 million. If we increase that 2.75 each year percent to keep it up with inflation, we would start to build a cash for capital and have financing mechanism for some of the smaller capital in the interim years before we hit the major capital project. So we would solve a few problems at the beginning and might be able to keep the mill rate low. Talking with Amy, we ask the question, is that realistic? I don't know. It's really about discipline. How creative can we be with our operating budget? What services, what are our priorities? Are they the operating expenses or is it this capital project? Because it is a zero-sum game, we can't do it all. What goes up, something must come down, whether it's taxes or other departmental spending.
What is the policy when it comes to doing something like that, and the out years, aren't the residents of the out years to pay for that as opposed to today's residents paying for that?
Yes. It hits about 2 years after you approve it, which is why we're very cautious. We do, for that exact reason, we have a policy that is more conservative than GFOA recommends debt service. They say debt service should not exceed 10% of the operating budget, because if it does that, education has got to go down. The public cannot afford 17% debt service. And so we keep ours at 8% cap, but we target it at 7 so that we can keep investing in teachers and police officers and roads and stuff like that. So that's one of the guardrails we have imposed. The other guardrail is 10-year bonding. We only do 10-year bonding, except for major capital school construction. We've never done it for a non-school construction project.
And how far out do those go? The school project?
20 years.
20 years.
So whatever we commit to, we've got people paying it 20 years later, and they may look back at us and go, what were you thinking? And why am I paying this cost? So it's that's a tough one, which is why we generally keep it at 10 years. 10 years, I did ask Paul Hanal once, how did they come up with 10 years? At the time, the average resident in Simsbury lived in Simsbury for 10 years. So
That's all?
and so that was how they picked the 10-year, so that those who voted for it bore the cost of what they chose.
Yeah.
So that's where it starts to get tricky. I mean, it's really about what we can't do probably is a major capital school instruction and keep going the way we've been going with our operating budget. So we have to decide which way we wanna go. And that's where the three boards will need to get together and we'll need to see what education wants to do, what public works, what public safety wants to do. And then of course, all of this is made easier if the grand list grows better than Amy's expectations. Francine's expectations. Oh, by the way, can we get from Francine an updated thing for the tri-board if she has one?
Sure.
'Cause maybe it'll come back with tremendously exciting news.
Yeah, we should manifest that.
Right? So can you show just for the public the financing graph? Cause that is sort of a nice visual if people don't like the numbers. When you see debt service falling off, you can see each one of those is existing debt is black. And the first two, 28, 29, if we wanted to fund the cash for capital, so avoid the spike and not give mill rate relief, but fund needed capital, you would then fund the capital at that level and slowly increase that like 2.7% to keep up with inflation. So you're building that cash for capital. So when you hit 2037, it's a mill rate spike. We're not going from purple to the top of yellow. We're going only a little bit above where we were. It's a much easier spike to absorb. So that's the idea behind funding cash for capital, but we need a commitment from our board. It requires discipline because what happens is everybody goes, taxes are too high, we need to cut somewhere. We're not cutting the operating budget. The first thing that gets cut is this cash for capital, and then you really left yourself in a pickle when the bonding piper comes to call. So it requires tremendous discipline to do that. So we would need buy-in from the three boards that this is the path we wanna go down. And that's what really is gonna be the focus of the tri-board. Can we have that commitment? Because we can't say, yes, we're gonna do that, and then, but we can't cut our operating budgets. And we're gonna do this during the periods when debt service is dipping. Give that to the taxpayers because that's coming right back up. And so you're just creating a massive spike if you do that. So that's the big sort of policy decision we'll have to make at the tri-board. Do we wanna use some of that 4 million, cause right now we're sitting on about 5 million in capital reserves, and the Board of Ed has 850 in their non-lapsing fund, so that gives them about 2 million in capital reserves that they could still use for some capital. So we haven't seen all the capital needs, but we know that there are always more capital needs than there are resources to fund. So the question is where do we wanna go?
So if there are operating efficiencies, does that board get to keep that capital for themselves, or does it go into the general?
Goes into the well, so on the Board of Ed side, they can keep it. If they have operating efficiencies, it goes into a non-lapsing education fund that the Board of Ed has sole discretion whether to put it in and how to use it.
Okay.
If capital is their priority, they should use it for capital. If it's not their priority, they can use it for something else. But it is a source of funding that is available.
Okay.
But that's not one that we have control over. The other savings that come from the town go into the general fund, and we appropriate that during the budget or through supplementals.
Got it. Okay.
And same with excess revenue, it comes back into the general fund.
Okay.
Except for reimbursable rates like excess costs on education. Alright, does that,
very interesting.
I mean, it kind of makes sense, but we're gonna have to make some decisions in next week about I think the big decision obviously is what operating increase is reasonable given what we've heard about from our constituents and what we know about inflation. The second one is, do we want to pay cash for capital and start building in that cash capacity so that we can then start preparing for the bump
Yeah.
and get more stabilized, but that would probably mean a commitment on our board to tax increases over 2%. One of the things I did wanna raise with this board, and we talked about it with Mark and with Amy, is I think we should put in our budget money for a townwide survey that's statistically valid, where we can actually ask our residents,
Yeah.
what kind of financial capacity do you have? Are you willing to spend a little more for a school? We did that when we did this senior center, and they did just a fabulous job, and it really helped guide the boards as what the residents were willing to spend their money on and what was their capacity and willingness. And so we might wanna do that. We used, I think, Great Blue. Do you remember who we used?
That would be fabulous. I mean, we should do what the people want us to do. Right?
Yeah, and
That's-
it's a nice way to get it, because if you don't do it with a company like that, you just put it out on SurveyMonkey, only those who have an interest in the area respond. And the way the
Yeah.
company we did, we made sure we hit different demographic groups,
Mhm.
different age groups, different parts of the community, so that we came within a 4% statistically valid
But we
study.
spent a bunch of money on a survey and never built a senior center.
That, you know what, but that saved us $12 million. That's what the survey showed, that the residents did not have the appetite for that. Had we not done that, we might have gone down the road at a time when residents were not willing to pay for it.
I didn't realize the survey was negative. I thought the survey results were positive.
No. But interestingly, the fascinating thing, we had some members who were willing to spend 12 million on a senior center, some were willing to spend maybe 5, but the middle number, nobody wanted it. It was so fascinating. Nobody wanted to go middle of the road. It was either don't do it or do it well.
Yeah.
And then at the end, and then I think Malloy said, "Oh, Towns, you're on the hook for $4 million." And I was like, oh well, there goes
Yeah,
the scene.
right, all that went out the window.
Yeah, that went on. But it really did help the Board of Finance say, at the time I was not on the Board of Finance, but they use that, the public does not want this. You can do 5 million. They to their credit went out and asked the public, well, what are you willing to pay? And we got some additional information that was really helpful. So it may be worth doing that, because otherwise we're just
guessing.
We're guessing.
Yeah, we're just guessing.
I mean, that's kind of what we're elected to do, but it's helpful to have the data to help us guess better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I mean,
just-
we guess with discipline, but this is something you have to ask.
Yeah, my gut is I'm bummed that the senior center wasn't supported more strongly, but the school will be.
Well, I don't know. Will they support it in elementary school where only a part of the population uses? I certainly think so with the high school and middle school. And I think it depends.
Depends on who's messaging what.
But it also depends on the dollar amount. You know, we found with the senior center, it did depend on what the dollar amount, what people thought was affordable, wasn't. And you know, if we can keep the tax increase steady at 2%, then we set the expectation that this is what's coming. And then how do we communicate it? We could do the budget and, oh, here's the surcharge that we approve for Squadron every year. So that's part of our budget presentation, so that we can show that the increases were known, or this is what the voters voted on, we're gonna be paying, this is year 13 of 20, this is year 12 of 20, so that it would help communicate sort of what we're doing. Cause at some point, we're gonna have to do these school improvements, and how do we, 1, communicate it, 2, gauge what residents can afford,
Yeah, yeah.
and 3, try and make the peaks and valleys not so dramatic.
Yeah.
So
And it's also the timing, if there's a reval and everyone's property taxes go up, they may not have any appetite for any kind of tax increase.
Well, we're starting to, you know, having just door knocked a lot, there was not a lot of
There was
appetite for a
no-
tax increase this year. I mean,
No, there was not. Every single person I spoke to said that.
people are,
Or they said nothing. But whenever they said something, it was that the recent tax increase was just too much.
so the question is, how do we juggle all of that? We need someone rich to move into town. Is one thing. But so that's where we are with that. In terms of the other, can you, while we're here, I've got everyone, just pull up quickly the Excel spreadsheet I sent earlier on assumptions. We'll just go through that quickly, just make sure everyone, cause that'll only take 5 minutes, everybody's seen this before. Okay, so I put down just goals, making them up. They're typically the ones we use. Tax increase below, we'll say whatever our number is at the tri-board. Inflation, is about 3%, but COLA was at 2.8, and that was reduced tremendously because Medicare went up 9.7%. So their seniors are feeling terrible right now. Maintain Simsbury's AAA credit rating, that's always one of our goals. Incorporate best practices and adhere to town financial policies to strengthen and maintain Simsbury's long-term fiscal stability. That's again a pretty standard one. And partner with fellow boards and the public to responsibly fund essential services in a way that aligns with our resources and stuff like that. Then the next section is the policies. These are what we have on our current website. Maintain general fund reserves at 16%, structurally balanced budget, no gimmicks. We had said last year we were not gonna use general fund reserves for recurring expenditures, which is why we're using capital fund reserves that we had assigned. We've already paid for them. One-time revenue sources for one-time expenditures, maintain health expense 25, maintain reserves, I wrote that wrong. Maintain 20 to 25% health reserves, may use up 1/3 of excess over 25%. Conservative estimates on revenue, objective estimates on expenditure projections, try and get those as accurate as we can. Tax collection assumption maintain at 98.5. Pension and OPEB investment assumptions, we just heard from our actuary, maintain at 6.5%. Budget annually required contribution, we always do that, maintain. Decision point we're gonna have to make on Wednesday whether to take our actuary's advice to transition to the use of the full OPEB as recommended by the town actuary tonight. We will vote on that next week. Interest investment assumption, we request that Amy consult with Fiducian, which she always does, and try and budget as an accurate number as we can get. Municipal cap, there is a municipal cap, it's not enforced, but we still maintain our budget increase below the municipal cap calculation. Debt service, not to exceed 8%, targeted at 7%, maintain. Traditional payback, and I'll go into that another thing, but maintain that current cap. We are willing to look at it next summer, we had mentioned. State municipal aid, we'll have to use the governor's budget before the legislature approves it because of the timing of when we get the numbers. Salaries, budget full years, no mid-year starts, that's a continuing guidance we've given. Gross budgets show gross and net spending, and we just saw tonight how critical that is. GFOA budget award criteria, incorporate criteria into the budget. I will send that out again, but there's lists of things that they want you to do. Debt and debt service, annual bonding for decision point, are we gonna pay cash instead of budgeting that, bonding that 4 million? Do we wanna start the cash for capital plan in the out years? Bonding term maintain 10 years. Use of capital reserve, we have one more year of that smoothing that we've set aside. Maintain a balance, our board has said, of at least 250 in capital reserves, so even though we'll have 2 million, leave 250 for an emergency. Capital reserve, are we gonna use the capital reserve fund to reduce bonding or for other CNR? Recurring capital as budgets permit, try and transition recurring capital back into the operating budgets. If it happens every year, it should be in the operating budget. Sometimes we have it in the capital budget for mill rate relief, but if we can. Capital lapsing rule, we were advised by council that, and we wanna just communicate that vehicles and equipment appropriations are now lapsing annually instead of over 3 years. So council has advised us that that is the rule we should follow, so that will be implemented in budgets going forward. WPCA and non-lapsing, we just asked what is the plan for the reserves, they're fairly high. Benefits budgeting, we have asked for a breakout by department or identify resources needed to do so that we can know the total spending on each department. Major policy recommendations will not be considered during the budget period between, and I didn't know, March and April. We generally don't do that in the height of the budget process because there just isn't the time. strong preference for consideration over the summer. One thing we discussed, we have the estimates from the assessor on the grant list. Sometimes they come in better. Does that mean we can spend more, or is that money we're gonna put aside in reserves for next year's funding, or is that money we're gonna put towards cash to capital and start to build that capacity for coming down the road? So, but we had talked about positive variance apply to mill rate relief or cash for capital. Negative grant list, if it comes in worse than we think, then plan on reductions to the operating budget. It's not, oh well, we'll just raise taxes. If the grant list comes in worse than projected, we'll have to make an adjustment. Quarterly reports, we had asked Amy to get that to us by April, and you'll notice in the budget calendar, it's a tentative date in April. Amy generally cannot get it at the time of the budget, it's just too soon, so we always do the second budget hearing so that we will have that. And then transparency, these are other things we always ask. Abatements and exemptions included in the budget, assumptions, any assumptions used, you saw Amy used a bunch of assumptions, clearly identified what they were for us. We asked that be done for the public as well. Savings summaries, all savings initiatives, and identify any contingency or discretionary spending that is baked into the budget. So that's the things we discussed. Bert is done. So, but give some thought to that, anything you wanna add. I think, after seeing tonight, I think we're gonna probably wanna add, we're gonna need more detail on capital project description sheets and funding, maybe. So
We have to ask more questions.
combination, we'll need more information, ask more questions, stuff like that. So give some thought as to what, if there's any guidance based after tonight, we wanna give on capital communication. And those are the main things, and then if you go to the other tab, what I put together in that, right there, you can see our budget. If we say it's gonna be a 2% increase, then we can work backwards, what does that mean for the Board of Selectmen? You could do 2.9 times 1.0275 and you'll get what their number is. So whatever our number is, we're gonna work through the tax levy and so be able to communicate to the board what they want. These are the assumptions that we had as of October, and those assumptions may change if we get new numbers from the assessor. So as the assumptions change, the guidance will change. And then the tax increases, if you just go to that tab, Amy, that just shows, okay, well, what does it mean? We do different tax increases. At 2%, if you can change the 2% to 3%, you can see all the numbers change, so you can get a quick idea of what that means to individuals at different price points. So we'll do that after the tri-board, cause they're really the only thing the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen really wanna know is what's their number that they can increase.
0.
Yeah.
You can also decrease the number.
Yeah, and I think that's we have the minutes, I don't think we have enough people to, oh, we do.
No, cause
Lalitha will recuse.
Aletha wasn't on the board, so we only have 3 people to vote.
Okay, so we will postpone the approval of the minutes to the next meeting without objection.
Without objection.
Okay. And communications, we have the fiscal year budget timeline, please add those to your calendars and plan on the second budget hearing for the Board of Finance after break. Okay, so with that, is there anything else I've forgotten, Amy, that needs to be done tonight?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm fried, I don't think so.
Mike, do you have any questions?
And tomorrow is
No, this is fascinating stuff, I appreciate it. I appreciate all that you guys do.
Yeah, and you can take that, I mean, I'm sure Amy will show you, but you can move the numbers around and see how it changes stuff. Alright, thank you everyone, thank you Amy and Tom and Mike, you guys are superheroes for being here.
We need a motion.
Yes, may I have one?
So moved. Motion to adjourn.
Is there,
Second.
all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town.
Bringing us together through local programming,
Education and live broadcasts.
SEM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community.
Ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings.
And celebrating milestones.
like our high school graduations.
But today, SEM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions. And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SEM receives less revenue.
Even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open.
Continues to educate our youth and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
for generations to come.
Visit our website
Or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media,
where your town,
Your schools
and your government come together.